Hello and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to the last session of Conclave Prelims 2024. We have received an overwhelming response from the students for this free current affairs crash course that we have been running on our YouTube channel for the past 1 month. Now with prelims approaching in just around 2 weeks, I would like to take up the final session, a marathon session today on IR, and help you cover a number of topics from the static portion and as well as a few topics related to current affairs. I really hope the entire series has been beneficial for your preparation, and we really hope some questions appear from our crash course directly in the prelims exam. So if you have benefited from this series, do support us with your likes, your comments, and without fail subscribe to our channel, because your support, your constant backing is what keeps us motivated to provide you with the most honest exam relevant content. So do extend that support and love that would encourage all our educators to do better in the coming days. So before we start, we have a very important announcement. Tomorrow on the 2nd of June, we are conducting the third mock test, Unacademy All India Prelims mock test. So this is a great opportunity for you to attempt full-length question papers, both for GS and CSAT. So do register for the mock test using the link provided in the video description. You will also get an All India Prelims rank, plus it will help you fine-tune your preparation for the upcoming exam. So with this, let's begin with the discussion. And today I have segregated the topics into different categories. I'll start with regional groupings and organizations. We are also going to look at some important international organizations, including the United Nations and its related agencies. We'll also look at some important treaties and conventions, and as well as few strategic places and strategic locations and projects that have been in the news. So I will not just cover the current affairs of last 18 months, but I will be covering some old topics as well from the last 4 to 5 years, because UPSC tends to surprise us by asking such unpredictable questions. So stay with me for the next 3 hours. I promise to cover around 50 topics, and this would be the best possible revision for you for covering international relations. So let's start with question number 1. The poll will be live. Try to answer the question. Please try to participate. Meanwhile, I'll start explaining the topic quickly and I'll give you the right answer. So the poll must be live by now. How many of the below given statements is or are correct? The last SAARC summit was held in Nepal in 2014. This statement is correct. Afghanistan was the last member country to join SAARC. What do you think? Is this statement correct or wrong? Was Afghanistan the last country to become the member of SAARC? Yes or no? Very good. This statement is correct as well. The third statement says SAARC currently has 5 observer states, including Russia, Brazil, Egypt, and others. Now let us check whether this statement is correct or incorrect, and then we will arrive at the correct answer. But before that, I would like to give you some important facts about SAARC. UPSC can ask these questions on regional groupings and organizations. SAARC is a regional grouping of South Asia. It stands for South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation. It was established in the year 1985 by 7 South Asian countries, including India, Pakistan, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and Maldives. These 7 South Asian countries established this organization for promoting regional integration and to achieve economic integration and connectivity within South Asia region. But later, in 2007, Afghanistan became the 8th member of the organization. So that is why statement number 2 is correct. And SAARC has around 9 observer states, not 5. There are 9 observer countries, which includes Australia, China, the European Union, Iran, Japan, South Korea, Mauritius, Myanmar, and the United States. So these are the 9 observer states. And as of now, there is a moratorium, a temporary halt on accepting new observers into the organization. So now, if we come back to the question, statement 3 is obviously incorrect. So what's the right answer? Option B. Only 2 statements are correct. I see that majority of you have got the right answer. Very good. Now let's move on to question number 2. Read the question carefully. It's asking you to identify how many of the given statements are incorrect. This question is related to BIMSTEC, which is another important regional grouping. BIMSTEC was established in 1997 through the Bangkok Declaration. It brings together few South Asian countries along with few Southeast Asian countries. It's a platform for regional cooperation and it is focused on the Bay of Bengal region. In fact, BIMSTEC stands for Bay of Bengal Initiative for multi-sectoral technical and economic cooperation. So let's see what's the first statement talking about. It says BIMSTEC was established through the Jakarta Declaration. So obviously it's incorrect because it was set up through the Bangkok Declaration of 1997. Now, which are the countries which are part of BIMSTEC? I told you that it's a bridge that connects few South Asian countries with Southeast Asia. So it includes few littoral states or rim countries of the Bay of Bengal, such as India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal and Bhutan from the South Asia region. From Southeast Asia, we have Myanmar and Thailand. So in total, you have 7 countries from the region which are part of the BIMSTEC initiative. Bay of Bengal is what connects these countries and it focuses on some important sectors through which cooperation is achieved between these partner countries. Now let's look at statement number 2. The BIMSTEC Charter was signed and adopted during the 5th summit held in the virtual format in Colombo in 2022. This statement is correct. 2 years ago, BIMSTEC countries met at the Colombo summit, the 5th BIMSTEC summit, which was held through the virtual format, and they adopted the BIMSTEC Charter. It essentially provides for the constitution of BIMSTEC. It defines the objectives, the priorities of the organization, and lays down the rules and processes and guidelines that is going to guide the organization. So BIMSTEC Charter being adopted in 2022 is a very big development. The topic is very important for our exams because it came into force just a few days ago in 2024. Just a few days ago, the BIMSTEC Charter has come into effect. It has taken effect. So statement 2 is absolutely correct. Statement 3 is also correct. It is a sector-based organization. Under the BIMSTEC Charter, there are 7 sectors which have been identified. And in these specific sectors, the 7 member countries will cooperate with each other. And each sector is headed by one member country. So essentially, 7 members are giving leadership to the 7 different sectors which are identified. For example, India is the lead country under the security sector. This deals with counter-terrorism, dealing with organized crime, dealing with energy security and as well as with disaster management and providing disaster assistance. So all these aspects of security is headed by India. So statement 4 is correct. So what is the question asking? It's asking you to identify the incorrect statement. So correct answer would be option A. Only one given statement is incorrect. So all the relevant points I've added here in the slides as well. Whatever we discussed, you can please go through that. And please take a look at the 7 sectors which I was talking about. The 7 sectors of BIMSTEC identified under the BIMSTEC Charter. Trade, investment and development headed by Bangladesh. Environment and climate change headed by Bhutan. India heading the security sector, dealing with terrorism, crime, energy, disaster management. Myanmar heads agriculture and food security. Nepal heads people-to-people relations and cultural relations. Sri Lanka provides leadership to the science and technology and innovation sector, and Thailand provides leadership to the connectivity sector. And talking about connectivity, during the 5th Colombo summit, when the BIMSTEC Charter was adopted, the BIMSTEC countries also adopted a master plan for connectivity. Under the master plan for connectivity, the member countries are going to assist each other in executing several important connectivity projects to bring these countries closer. Many of these projects will be funded by the ADB, the Asian Development Bank. So these are the important points you need to be familiar with in order to answer any question on BIMSTEC. Now let's look at question number 3. How many of the below given statements is or are correct? 3 statements related to ASEAN and India's relations with ASEAN. Go through the statements. The poll will be live very soon. See if you can give me the correct answer, and then I'll explain parallelly as well. See, ASEAN is a regional grouping focused on Southeast Asia. It brings 10 Southeast Asian countries together. Which are these 10 Southeast Asian countries? You have Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Philippines, Indonesia, Singapore, Brunei. These 10 Southeast Asian countries established, they formed this organization called the ASEAN, which was established in 1967 through the Bangkok Declaration. So don't get confused. There are 2 Bangkok declarations. The one in 97 that led to the establishment of BIMSTEC. But this Bangkok Declaration was signed in 1967, 3 decades before that, which led to the establishment of ASEAN. So India has prioritized its relations with ASEAN group ever since we launched the Look East policy of India. The P.V. Narasimha Rao government, after the end of the Cold War, tried to diversify India's foreign relations and launch the Look East policy, through which we started paying more attention to Southeast Asia and East Asia. This led to the establishment of a relationship between India and ASEAN in 1992, and India was recognized by ASEAN as a sectoral dialogue partner. So statement 1 is definitely correct. India-ASEAN relations was upgraded to the summit level in 2002. This statement is also right. To mark the 10th anniversary of relations between India and ASEAN, in 2002, the relationship was elevated to the summit level, meaning the prime ministers and presidents of these 11 countries, including India, they would meet regularly. They would meet every year at the annual India-ASEAN Summit. Understood? So summit level interaction was established where the head of states and head of governments of the 10 ASEAN nations along with India would meet every year. In fact, in 2012, the relationship was elevated to the strategic partnership level. India-ASEAN elevated the relationship to the strategic partnership level, and they further diversified this relationship. Thanks to this relationship, we signed a free trade agreement with ASEAN. Today, we are building strategic defense relations as well. And under the Act East policy, India-ASEAN have further taken forward this relationship, and in 2022, to mark 40 years of relations between India-ASEAN, 30 years of relations between India-ASEAN, the relationship was elevated to the comprehensive strategic partnership level. So this is the best possible relationship that we can have with a grouping like ASEAN. So statement 2 is also correct. And statement 3 says India has a permanent mission to ASEAN located at Jakarta. What do you think about the third statement? Is it correct or incorrect? Do we have a permanent mission to ASEAN? And is it located in Jakarta in Indonesia? Yes or no? No? Incorrect? But some of them are saying correct as well. This statement is absolutely correct. Just like we have a permanent mission to the United Nations at New York and at Geneva, similarly, we have a permanent mission to the ASEAN, essentially like a diplomatic mission or an embassy. And it is located in Jakarta, and India interacts with ASEAN group through this diplomatic mission, which is a permanent mission to the ASEAN. So all 3 given statements are correct, and hence option C becomes your correct answer. Is that clear? Let's move on to question number 4. I have given some relevant points which I have discussed. Please go through that once you get the PDF. Now, I was also looking at the comments that many of you are not able to download the PDF. Don't worry, we are sharing the PDF on the Telegram channel as soon as the session ends. So once the session comes to an end, please join our Telegram channel, search for Unacademy IAS English, and immediately we will share the PDF as well, so that you can have a copy of all the questions along with the data and the facts that we have added into the PPT. Let's look at question number 4. What best describes ADMM plus meeting? 4 options have been given. Please go ahead. The poll will be live soon. Let's see how many of you can get this right. ADMM plus meeting. This meeting is frequently in the news. Even recently, just a few weeks ago, ADMM plus meeting was held. So what best describes ADMM plus amongst the 4 given options? Many of you are saying option B, majority of them. Very good. That is indeed the correct answer. It brings ASEAN and its 8 dialogue partners together to discuss the defense and security issues of the region. This is the correct answer. See, ADMM is a platform for the 10 ASEAN defense ministers to come together and discuss the defense and security issues of Southeast Asia. All the 10 ASEAN partners, they regularly hold the ADMM meetings. Initially, when it was started, it was a biennial event. It was being held once in 2 years. But now this has been turned into an annual event. So after the 10 ASEAN ministers, the defense ministers meet, they hold ADMM plus meeting with 8 dialogue partners of ASEAN. ASEAN has given the status of a dialogue partner for 8 important powers. Which are these 8 countries? It includes India, Australia, New Zealand. It also includes China and Russia and United States. These 8 major powers, which have very good relations with ASEAN, they are recognized as the dialogue partners of ASEAN. Their defense ministers interact with the defense ministers of ASEAN. So totally 18 countries come together under ADMM plus initiative. The respective defense ministers interact to discuss the defense and security issues such as maritime security, counter-terrorism, tackling organized crime, or extending HADR assistance during disasters. HADR stands for Humanitarian Assistance and Disaster Relief. So all such security issues are discussed between ADMM plus defense ministers. And if you know these basic facts, you will be able to answer any given question. Now let's look at the next question, question number 5. This question is related to Indian Ocean Commission, IOC. IOC is an important sub-regional group focused on which region? The poll will be live very soon. Please look at the given options and see if you can give me the right answer. The poll will be live. So please go ahead, attempt this question. Let me know. Which region does Indian Ocean Commission focus upon? Where is it based out of? Is it South Asia, Northern Indian Ocean, Southeast Asia, Eastern Indian Ocean, Western Indian Ocean, or West Asia and the Arabian Sea? Close to 48 to 50% students are getting the right answer. Very good. The right answer is option C. It focuses on the western part of Indian Ocean, near East Africa. Let's understand what is Indian Ocean Commission, why is it important. Now, if you look at the map that I've shared over here, you are essentially looking at the western part of Indian Ocean region. Within this circle, near East Africa, there are few island countries located, such as Madagascar, Comoros, Seychelles, Mauritius, and you also have an overseas French territory called the La Réunion or the French Reunion. These 5 island nations of the Indian Ocean located in Western Indian Ocean, they have collectively come together to establish this grouping called Indian Ocean Commission. Now, how is this topic relevant for us? The topic is very important for us because recently in 2020, India became an observer to the Indian Ocean Commission. India was admitted as one of the observer states into the Indian Ocean Commission. There are other observers such as China, Japan, European Union, Malta, United Nations, and the OIF, the Francophonie countries, the French-speaking nations, which were former French colonies. So these 7 observers have a representation at the Indian Ocean Commission. So India becoming an observer to the organization is of great significance because this will further our Sagar doctrine, the security and growth for all in the region. It helps project India's influence, economic, military and diplomatic influence, that too near a strategic region which is East Africa and the Mozambique Channel that's located over here between Madagascar and East Africa. It is an important shipping lane. India has a lot of interest, economic and strategic interest in the region. So by becoming an observer to the IOC, which also includes China, it gives India an opportunity to exercise its influence across this region. Is that clear? So that is why the topic is very important. Let's move on to next question. Question number 6. Read the question carefully. The poll will be live very soon. The question is related to IFCIOR, Information Fusion Center for the Indian Ocean region. The statement says it is a regional maritime security center hosted by the United Nations. It is headquartered in India. It currently hosts international liaison officers from 12 countries. You need to check which of the above statements are correct. Please go ahead, attempt this question. IFCIOR has been frequently in the news. In fact, over the last 5 to 6 years, this particular initiative has generated a lot of interest, global interest. Let's see how many of you can answer this right. Okay, let me evaluate each statement. Statement 1 is incorrect. It is not hosted by the United Nations. In fact, UN has nothing to do with IFCIOR. This is purely an Indian initiative, led by India, started by India, hosted by India. It is headquartered in India. The command center of IFCIOR is headquartered in India. Does anyone know where is it headquartered? In which city in India is IFCIOR located? Anyone in the comments, please let me know. I'll explain what is this initiative. It's in Haryana. Very good. It's in Gurugram. It's headquartered in Gurugram and it is operated by the Indian Navy. It is a maritime security initiative. Is that clear? And 12 countries have posted their liaison officers to coordinate with the Indian Navy on sharing intelligence generated through IFCIOR. To share maritime intelligence generated across Indian Ocean, 12 friendly navies have stationed their liaison officers at this facility in Gurugram. So 2 and 3 are correct. So the right answer would be option C, 2 and 3 only. Let me give you some background about IFCIOR and what does the project entail. See, the Mumbai attacks, the 26/11 Mumbai attacks in 2008, it exposed the critical gaps in our maritime security. Following this, the then Manmohan Singh government launched a very ambitious maritime security project called the Coastal Surveillance Radar Project. Under the phase 1 of the project, India installed a series of coastal radars covering the entire coastline of India, from Gujarat to West Bengal. And even the island territories of Lakshadweep and Andaman Nicobar were covered under these radars. A chain of radars were set up to track the movement of ships and all the vessels across the Indian Ocean region. Based on the success of this project, it was extended to phase 2 to cover a few friendly countries across Indian Ocean. Countries like Seychelles, Mauritius, they became part of the initiative and India set up radars, coastal surveillance radars in Seychelles and Mauritius. Is that clear? There is a proposal to expand this to include Maldives, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh and Myanmar as well. It's a proposal. But it has already been set up in Seychelles and Mauritius and it provides us coverage of almost the entire Indian Ocean and helps us track the movement of ships and vessels all across the Indian Ocean. So it's a very important security initiative and it generates valuable maritime intelligence. It helps in coordinating maritime security operations, especially anti-piracy missions or operations targeting smuggling and trafficking in the Indian Ocean. Because Indian Ocean frequently witnesses drug trafficking, drug smuggling, gold smuggling, arms trafficking attempts by criminal cartels. So we can deal with these threats more effectively, coordinate our operations more effectively. Recently, for example, Indian Navy disrupted a pirate attack, and IFC IOR played a key role in the operation in achieving the coordination between Indian Navy and Indian Air Force, and also in communicating with foreign navies in the region. So it's one of the most important security initiatives launched by India, and many countries have shown interest in the project. They have partnered with India. Around 25 countries have partnered with India over this project, and 12 of them have stationed their liaison officers. Close partners like US, Australia, Japan, even Italy and UK, and many others. They have stationed their naval liaison officers at IFC IOR in Gurugram to work with Indian Navy and to share the maritime intelligence. So that is why the topic is very, very important given the developments that are happening across the Indian Ocean. So it will help in countering piracy, any attempts at armed robbery, because these incidents have been increasing, not just near Horn of Africa, not just near Somalia, but also in Southeast Asia and also in Gulf of Guinea in West Africa. These three regions are of concern with regard to piracy, armed robbery attempts, and initiatives like IFC IOR helps all these countries to counter these threats. Now let's move on to question number 7. Which of the following countries is or are not a part of the Colombo Security Conclave? It's another important initiative focused on the Indian Ocean region. So please let me know which of the following countries is or are not a part of Colombo Security Conclave. Maldives, Bangladesh, Thailand, Seychelles. Select the correct answer. Colombo Security Conclave was established recently in 2020. In 2022, a new member was added into the Colombo Security Conclave. And since then, it has become a key platform for security cooperation in the Indian Ocean. Let's see how many of you are getting it right. Almost 44% students have the right answer. Option C, 3 only is the correct answer. Thailand is not part of Colombo Security Conclave. Maldives, Bangladesh, Seychelles, they are part of Colombo Security Conclave. See, in 2011, India established a trilateral maritime security initiative with Sri Lanka and Maldives to cooperate with regard to defense and security matters in the Indian Ocean. India worked with Sri Lanka and Maldives, and we formed a trilateral maritime security initiative. India always wanted to expand the initiative and include Mauritius as well. So in 2020, this was transformed into the Colombo Security Conclave, and in 2022, Mauritius joined the group as the 4th member. In the same year, Bangladesh and Seychelles also joined Colombo Security Conclave, but as observer states. It brings together the national security advisors of all these countries and provides a platform for the armed forces and intelligence agencies of these countries to coordinate with each other to deal with the defense and maritime security issues of the Indian Ocean. So that is why it's another important grouping. Now let's move on to question number 8. The IORA was established through the initiative of which of the following countries? IORA stands for Indian Ocean Rim Association. So as you can see, we are trying to cover all the important groupings and associations of the region. We covered the groupings around South Asia. Now we are looking at Indian Ocean, and we will look at other parts of the world as well in a few minutes. So let me know which of the following countries established the IORA. Is it A, B, or C, or D? All right, I'll give you the correct answer. It is India and South Africa. Option A is the correct answer. Very good. 55% of the students have given the right answer. Very good. See, IORA, which was set up in the 1990s, it was based on the idea proposed by Nelson Mandela, the South African leader. Nelson Mandela was visiting India in 1995, and he proposed the idea of bringing the rim countries of Indian Ocean together. He stated that the littorals of Indian Ocean, they are connected geographically, historically. Our destinies are connected with each other. Is that clear? So based on this suggestion by Nelson Mandela, India and South Africa came together along with Mauritius to establish this organization, which was previously known as IORARC. It was known by a different name, Indian Ocean Rim Association for Regional Cooperation. Gradually, the grouping expanded by adding many more members from Indian Ocean, and later the name was changed to IORA. A simpler name was given, Indian Ocean Rim Association. So it brings together many rim countries or littoral countries of Indian Ocean from West Asia, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and also from Africa, and also includes Australia as well. Today we have 23 major countries of the Indian Ocean which are members of IORA grouping. It's headquartered at Seabed in Mauritius, and it's a platform for regional cooperation in the Indian Ocean. Please look at the map. You can understand which countries are part of IORA grouping. 23 member states. It includes Iran. It includes United Arab Emirates, Oman. It includes East African nations like Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique. It includes Australia. It has major Southeast Asian powers like Singapore and Indonesia. It also has France as a member because of the French overseas territory, the French Reunion, which is present near Mauritius. So such important powers are part of the grouping, and there are important observer states as well. They have the dialogue partner status, meaning they can participate in the dialogue. From China to United States, to Germany, Italy, Japan, South Korea, Russia and UK, they all hold the status of dialogue partners at the IORA grouping. So there are 6 key pillars. There are 6 pillars under which IORA countries work with each other. These are the priority areas. Please make a note of this as well. There could be a question based on this. So maritime security is a focus, trade, investment and facilitation, fisheries management, disaster risk reduction, and providing HADR assistance to each other during times of disaster, academic and scientific cooperation, promoting tourism and cultural exchanges. All these are the priorities of IORA. Under the trade pillar, these countries are focused on promoting the blue economy model, also called ocean economy model. It's a sustainable model of economic development for coastal states, which is promoted by United Nations as well. Under the blue economy or ocean economy model, the focus is on sustainable exploitation of marine resources to ensure that the exploitation of resources from the seas and oceans doesn't cause damage to the marine ecosystem, and ensure that the benefits of this economic exploitation is provided to the local people, especially the coastal communities, the fishing villages, right, which are present along the coastline. They should benefit from such development, and this should be sustainable without causing much damage to the sensitive marine environment. That is the focus of blue economy. So based on this, you can expect questions, and that is why IORA is another important topic. Now let's move on to question number 9. Please focus on the class, don't chit chat, don't spam the chat box. Concentrate on the discussion and add something productive which will help other students as well. Look at question number 9. How many of the statements are correct? It's related to FIPIC, Forum for India-Pacific Islands Cooperation. There are 3 statements given here. Let's see how many of you can answer this right. Recently, FIPIC was in news. India participated in the summit. I'll not tell you in which year, but India did participate recently in the FIPIC summit. So let's see how many of you know this topic. Forum for India-Pacific Islands Cooperation was launched in 2014. The first FIPIC summit was held in Fiji in 2014. Last statement, only one FIPIC summit has been held till date. Which of the statements are correct? Almost 80%. are saying option B. Okay, let's check each statement. Statement 1 and 2 are correct. Statement 3 is incorrect. So what's the right answer? Option B. Only 2 given statements are correct. See, FIPEC provides a platform for India and Pacific Island countries to cooperate and work with each other. In fact, today there is a lot of focus on the South Pacific region. Geopolitical competition has broken out in the South Pacific between global powers such as US and China. Traditionally, in the South Pacific, in the Oceania region, countries like Australia, US, and even Japan and New Zealand have been very dominant and influential. So in this map, you can see the Oceania region, the South Pacific region. There are many small island countries like Solomon Islands, Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, Fiji, Samoa, and others. So these Pacific Island nations, they are already part of their own regional grouping. And India works closely with them because there is a great power competition which has begun in the region. Traditionally, Australia and New Zealand were very influential here, given the proximity of these countries. Even United States was very influential because there is an American territory here, that is Guam, where US has a major naval base. But of late, China has been projecting its influence into the region. It has even signed a security agreement with the Solomon Islands. So traditionally, India has very good ties with some of these countries, especially Fiji, where you have a very strong Indian community present. During colonial rule, a lot of Indian families were transported here as part of the indentured labor system. And the British would make them work here in the plantation crops, to maintain the plantation crops, which was part of the British enterprise. So many of the families have remained over here and they form a cultural link with India. So India would also like to compete with these powers because the region is blessed with resources. These small island nations have a very large exclusive economic zone. From hydrocarbons to precious minerals to fisheries, all the resources are found here, and hence the South Pacific is always in focus. So India has stepped up the relations with these countries by establishing a forum called FIPEC, the Forum for India-Pacific Islands Cooperation. It was set up in 2014 and it brings India together with 14 Pacific Island countries. The first summit was held in Fiji in 2014. Second summit was held in India in Jaipur. And the third summit was held recently, last year, in Papua New Guinea. If you remember, PM Modi visited Papua New Guinea after the Quad meeting in Japan. Right? After the Quad and G7 summit in Japan, PM Modi visited Papua New Guinea and took part in the FIPEC summit, which was hosted by PNG. So, based on this, we can say that third statement is incorrect and B becomes the right answer. Now, let's move on to question number 10. Read the question carefully. It's related to East Asia Summit. Which of the following statements is or are correct? The East Asia Summit was established in 2005. India is a member of East Asia Summit. And the last statement, India has hosted one edition of the East Asia Summit. Please go ahead. The poll is live. Try and give the right answer. Let's see how many of you can get this right. Okay, first let's talk about the East Asia Summit, so that with the background, I think you will be able to get the right answer. See, East Asia Summit was established in 2005. Do you remember the members of ADMM Plus meeting? The 18 countries which participate in ADMM Plus meeting? It is the same 18 countries which are members of East Asia Summit. So essentially 10 ASEAN countries plus the 8 dialogue partners of ASEAN. So these 18 countries, including India, are members of East Asia Summit. The goal here is to bring all the major powers of the Indo-Pacific region, right, especially who play a critical role in Southeast and East Asia. And ASEAN countries are the focus. They are the focal point of this organization. Now you might ask, what's the difference between ADMM Plus and East Asia Summit then, if it's the same countries? Please understand, ADMM Plus was a defense ministers meeting, whereas East Asia Summit, it's a summit level interaction where the head of states, head of governments are interacting. The prime ministers and presidents of these 18 countries interact. And this happens every year. Along with the ASEAN Summit, right? ASEAN countries, they hold the East Asia Summit as well. So it's one of the most important groupings of the region, and it focuses on a variety of issues, from defense security issues to economic cooperation, to dealing with crime and other security challenges, to dealing with impact of climate change, the impact of epidemics and pandemics, to deal with disasters. So it's one of the key platforms of the region, and you should know what is the membership of East Asia Summit and what is India's involvement. So India is a member. India is one of the members. It was established in 2005, but India has not hosted any editions of the East Asia Summit. It is always hosted by a ASEAN member, because ASEAN Summit and East Asia Summit are held back to back. So only the Southeast Asian countries host the East Asia Summit. So what's the right answer? Option B, 1 and 2 only. Can we see how many of them got the right answer? I think only 32% of the students have got this right. Majority of them have got the wrong answer. So I think that is where a session like this will help you revise and recollect everything. I'm sure many of you would have heard about these topics. You would know a lot of information, but at the end you need to get the right answer. So that is where MCQs, they help you practice and revise, right? Plus we will provide you the extra information which might be needed for the exam. So let's move on to the next question, question number 11. The Seoul Declaration and Golden Gate Declaration is related to which of the following organization or grouping? Straightforward question. If you have heard about these declarations, you will be able to get this answer. Is it related to Pacific Islands Forum, which we were just discussing? Is it related to APEC or the Trans-Pacific Partnership or TPP or the UN Environment Programme? I think many students have already given the right answer, almost 60%. Option B is the correct answer. It is related to the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, the APEC. Now, I'll give you a question. Can you tell me whether India is a member of APEC or not? Yes or no? Is India a member of APEC or no? Yes or no? Most of them are saying no. Very good. India is not a member. We have sought the membership. We have requested these APEC countries to admit India as a member. But India is not a member of APEC. So what is APEC? Let's look at some basic facts which might be needed for the exam. Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, as the name itself tells you, it is focused on the Asia-Pacific region. It brings together some of the major economies of Southeast Asia, East Asia, and few Pacific countries as well. It was established in 1989, and there are 21 major economies which are part of this organization. The primary focus is building economic ties. In 1991, these APEC countries adopted the Seoul Declaration in South Korea that determined the foundation of this organization. That is why Seoul Declaration is important. It was established in 1989, but in 91, the Seoul Declaration laid down the foundation, the guiding principles of APEC. And recently, the United States hosted the APEC summit in San Francisco. That is where the Golden Gate Declaration was adopted. In 2023, the US hosted the APEC summit. The US is also one of the members. So following this summit at San Francisco, after the historic landmark, the Golden Gate Bridge, the Golden Gate Declaration was adopted by the APEC countries, and this topic was in the news as well. Understood? So it's headquartered in Singapore. It includes a number of developed economies and manufacturing powerhouses. So it's one of the highest platforms available for economic cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region. So please look at the map that I've shared over here. You can see all the member countries from Russia to Canada to several Southeast and East Asian countries, and also few North American and South American countries, which are the littorals of the Pacific. Is that clear? So please note down that India has been seeking membership, but we have not been admitted. However, India is an observer. India holds observer status. In 2011, India was admitted by the APEC as an observer, but we have not received full membership, and that is something India desires. The reason why India has not been admitted is because, according to some countries, India is not a Pacific nation. The core logic here is that APEC is a grouping of the Pacific littorals. Just like BIMSTEC is a grouping of Bay of Bengal littorals, or IORA is a grouping of Indian Ocean littorals, the APEC is a grouping of Pacific littorals, and India is not a Pacific littoral. So on this basis, India has been excluded, but we do have observer status. Next, question number 12. India has not joined which of the 4 pillars of IPEF? IPEF is in the news as well as part of current affairs, and it is a slightly older topic from the last 2 to 3 years. So there could be a question based on this. Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. India has not joined which of the 4 pillars of IPEF? Trade, supply chain resilience, clean economy, tax, and anti-corruption. So these are the options given for you. Go ahead and give me the right answer. All right. Almost 70% are saying option A. Very good. Option A is the correct answer. India has not joined the trade pillar of IPEF. We have joined the other 3 pillars: supply chain resilience, clean economy, tax, and anti-corruption. So what is IPEF? It's an economic framework proposed by the United States for the Indo-Pacific region. The idea was brought up in 2021 by the US. It's a US-led initiative. During the 2021 East Asia Summit, that is when US President Biden for the first time spoke about the idea of IPEF. And in the next year, in 2022, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework was established between US and 12 of its partner countries. So several countries from Southeast Asia and Pacific region, and as well as India from the Indian Ocean region, they joined IPEF, and later Fiji, the South Pacific country of Fiji, also joined the grouping as the 14th member. So totally there are 14 member countries, including US, India, Australia, Japan, and many others. You can see the countries which are part of IPEF over here. Now many students have a wrong assumption about IPEF. They assume that IPEF is a free trade agreement. Please note down, it's not a free trade agreement. It's not an FTA. It is just a framework for economic cooperation. So there are 4 pillars identified under which these 14 partner countries can work with each other, collaborate with each other to improve the economic relations between them. These 4 pillars are trade, supply chain resilience, clean economy, and taxes and anti-corruption. India has joined 3 pillars. Pillar number 2, 3, 4. Is that clear? We are very eager to diversify the global supply chains and build resilience into supply chains. Right? We are focused on transitioning towards a clean economy to decarbonize our economies. So India is on board this idea, and we have joined this pillar as well. And India also wants to work with the other countries on fair trade practices to ensure that we tackle corruption, implement good governance, synchronize our laws and policies, etc. So we are comfortable with these 3 pillars, and India has joined these 3 pillars. But however, we have not joined the trade pillar because we are worried about possible tariff reduction, which might be part of the trade pillar. And India's concern is this might result in a flood of cheap imports into the Indian market, which could hurt our domestic producers. So on this ground, India has not joined the trade pillar as a member, but we are an observer to the trade pillar. India has observer status in pillar 1, but we are a member of pillar 2, 3 and 4. Got it? So please note down these key points about IPEF. Now coming to question number 13. Which country is not a member of GCC, Gulf Cooperation Council? Now we are moving towards West Asia. We completed Indian Ocean, Southeast East Asia and the Pacific. Now we are focusing on the West Asia region and the groupings from West Asia. Which of the countries given here is not a member of GCC? The poll is live. More than 60% of the students think it is Iraq. You're absolutely right. Option C is the correct answer. Iraq is not a member of GCC. What is the GCC? The GCC is a political and economic grouping of the Gulf region. It is led by Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates, the leading Sunni powers of the region. Along with Saudi and UAE, the other major Sunni powers like Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar and Oman, these 6 Gulf countries from the Arabian Peninsula are members of the GCC. So they focus on economic relations, diplomatic relations and even defense and security relations as well. India has very good equation with all the countries. In fact, we are negotiating an FTA with the GCC countries. It's a proposed idea to have an FTA between India and the entire GCC group. Is that clear? Recently, there was an issue related to Qatar. Within the GCC, a split, a divide had come up because the other members accused Qatar of working with various radical groups which are sponsored by Iran. The major Sunni powers led by Saudi Arabia, UAE and others, they accused Qatar of backing radical outfits, extremist outfits like Hamas, Muslim Brotherhood and the others, and working for Iranian interests. So based on this accusation, Qatar had been boycotted within the GCC and these member countries had even cut off their relations with Qatar. But following negotiations between these members, the relations were revived recently and Qatar was brought back into the group, the blockade was lifted and the relations were resumed between these countries and Qatar. So that is one more reason why the organization could become very important, and also given the developments happening in West Asia, all these groupings focused on the region could be very important for our exams. So please note down the factual points. I've added this in the slide as well and I've mentioned that while discussing the answer. Now let's move on to question number 14. Consider the following statements. 3 statements have been given with regard to the Arab League, which is another important regional organization. The Arab League was in the news over the last 2 to 3 years. So let's see if you have heard about this, if you know the composition. These are the 3 statements. It was founded in 1945. Its member countries are only from the West Asia region. India holds observer status at the Arab League. So these are the type of questions, the format of questions that you can expect in the prelims as well. Can anyone tell me why Arab League was in the news? What could be the reason? As you're answering the poll, please let me know in the comments if you know why Arab League was in the news and why is it significant. Because of Israel and Hamas? No. Dheeraj Jadhav has given the right answer because Syria was recently readmitted into the Arab League. Syria had been disqualified from the group in 2011. After the Syrian civil war started, the Syrian government headed by President Bashar al-Assad was accused of curbing human rights and targeting the protesters. And on these grounds, Syria had been removed as a member from Arab League. But recently, following the improved relations between the Sunni and Shia powers, between Saudi Arabia and Iran, which was mediated by China, China acted as a mediator between Saudi Arabia and Iran, and it brought out a detente between these two rivals, the Sunni and Shia rival powers. Following this, Syria was readmitted into Arab League as a member. So that was a very big development. So let's look at the statements one by one, and then I'll show you which are the other member countries as well. Arab League was founded in 1945. This statement is correct. Its members are only from West Asia. This statement is wrong. The members are not just from West Asia. I'll show you the map. You'll understand which other countries are part of the organization. India holds observer status. Yes, India does have observer status at Arab League. So what's the right answer? Only two statements. Option B is the correct answer. See, Arab League was established in 1945 in Cairo, and it is headquartered in Cairo, Egypt, following the Alexandria Protocol of 1944. The Alexandria Protocol brought together the major Arab powers from West Asia and as well as from North Africa and from East Africa as well. So if you look at the members, there are 22 members which are part of Arab League. There are countries from North Africa as well. There are countries from East Africa. For example, you have Mauritania, you have Algeria, right? You have Morocco, which is also a member. You have East African countries like Somalia, Djibouti. So all these are members. Then you also have Comoros from Western Indian Ocean. So it's not just West Asian powers. There are African countries as well which are members of Arab League. That is why statement 2 is wrong. Which are the observer states? Apart from India, these are the observer countries. Armenia, Brazil, Greece, Venezuela, Chad and Eritrea. These are the observer states. So since Syria was recently readmitted to the organization, the topic is very important, and India has a lot of interests from West Asia to North Africa, and we have very good relations with most of these member countries. So that is why Arab League is an important topic. Now coming to question number 15. Which of the following is considered as the second largest intergovernmental organization after the United Nations in terms of member countries present? 4 options are given. Let me know which is the correct answer. Which of the given organization is considered to have the second largest membership after the UN? Is it African Union, European Union, the OIC, or none of the above? The correct answer is option C, Organization of Islamic Cooperation. The OIC has 57 member countries. And this is another organization which is in the news. And India has interests with OIC. So OIC brings together several countries with a significant Muslim population. The stated goal, the stated objective of OIC is to protect the interests of the Muslim community around the world and ensure that international peace and harmony is maintained and Islamophobia can be countered. So with these objectives and intentions, OIC was established between various countries from West Asia, South Asia, Africa and other parts of the world, that brings together 57 countries, all of which have a significant Muslim population. Is that clear? So this makes OIC the second largest international organization after the United Nations. Understood? So it acts as the collective voice of the Muslim world, protects the interests of the Muslim community, and also promotes peace and harmony and helps in countering Islamophobia. Now, why is it of concern for India? It is of concern for us because Pakistan has regularly misused the platform. Pakistan is a very powerful member of OIC. It uses the influence to target India by bringing up the Kashmir issue and other internal matters of India. Be it the changes we carried out to Article 370, or be it the reorganization of J&K, or the security and human rights situation in Kashmir, or even the Citizenship Amendment Act and the controversy surrounding it. All such internal matters of India are internationalized by Pakistan, and it also gets the support of some countries like Turkey, Malaysia and others. So India has tried to become a member of OIC because India has a valid claim to join the organization as a member, as India has one of the world's largest Muslim population after Indonesia. But Pakistan has blocked India's membership. Pakistan has blocked India's entry into OIC. But recently, thanks to the improved relations with Saudi Arabia, UAE and others, India was invited as a guest country. Some of you might remember, then Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj delivered a historic speech at OIC and targeted Pakistan for its activities against India when India was invited as the guest of honor. So we are seeking membership, but as of now, India has put the issue on the back burner because Pakistan has deliberately misused the platform repeatedly, and even Turkey, Malaysia and others have often supported Pakistan in this regard. So that is why OIC becomes important. Please note down, it was founded in 1969. So with this, we have covered a number of important groupings and organizations. Please take a look at the members and observer states as well, just for reference, because UPSC may not go into these details, but still it's good to at least have an idea as to which countries are members and which of them are observers at this important grouping. Now let's look at question number 16. Consider the following. Now we move towards Africa. The African Union was officially launched in 2002 and it replaced its predecessor, the Organization of African Unity. It consists of 55 member states and is headquartered in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. The Treaty of Pelindaba that established a nuclear weapon-free zone in Africa was the first major initiative of the African Union after being established. First, let me tell you why African Union is very important this time. Because recently at the G20 summit hosted by India, where India held the presidency of G20, India ensured that African Union was admitted as a member of the G20. I'm sure many of you would know about this, correct? You would know that last year when India hosted the G20 and we held the presidency of G20, India played a big role to give representation for the global south. And due to the Indian initiative, African Union was admitted as a member, a full-time member of the G20. So that is why the static portion related to African Union becomes important. So now let's evaluate the statements. The first statement is correct. African Union was established in 2002. It replaced its predecessor organization called Organization of African Unity. Second statement is also correct. It consists of 55 African states as its members and it is headquartered in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Third statement, however, is wrong. It's incorrect. See, African countries have established a nuclear weapon-free zone. That is correct. Through the Treaty of Pelindaba, signed in late 1990s, African countries have committed to never develop or procure nuclear weapons to ensure that there is no arms race in Africa. This is their commitment to non-proliferation. But however, it was not signed after African Union was established. We learned that African Union was set up in 2002, but the Pelindaba Treaty was signed in late 1990s, much before African Union was established. It was signed under the previous organization, the Organization of African Unity. So that is why statement 3 is incorrect. So what's the correct answer? 1 and 2 only. Option B becomes the correct answer. So all the relevant points are added here. Whatever I discussed, whatever I mentioned, everything has been provided here in the points. So please take a look at this after the session ends. All right, let's move on to question number 17. Which country is not a member of the Eurasian Economic Union? Now we are moving towards Central Asia, Eurasia region. Which country is not a member? Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Uzbekistan. Again, this grouping was in the news due to Russia-Ukraine war. There is also a proposed free trade agreement between India and Eurasian Economic Union. There is a proposed FTA. Ukraine was supposed to be a member of this grouping. Russia was very, very eager to include Ukraine under Eurasian Economic Union. But over the last 2 decades, right after the Cold War ended, Ukraine has been heavily influenced, especially in the last 20 years, by European Union and NATO powers. It started inclining towards joining EU and NATO, and it broke apart from this Eurasian community that Russia was trying to build. Russia's ambition was to revive the Soviet era glory. Because in 91, when the Cold War ended, Soviet Union disintegrated to create all these new states like Belarus, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Ukraine, then all your Central Asian countries, right? So Russia, which was the successor to Soviet Union, wanted to rebuild the glory of the Soviet Empire. So it tried forming these economic blocs, these regional groupings, trying to bring them back together. But Ukraine was a critical ally which should have been part of such a union to rebuild Russian influence. But as Ukraine started swinging towards the west, Ukraine declined to be a part of such an economic bloc, and that is what led to the rise of tensions between Russia and Ukraine. Gradually, this built up over a period of time, and eventually Russia started attacking Ukraine from 2014. Right? So there is a direct connection between the two. So let's see how many of you have got the right answer. Just 41% have said D. Okay. The question is asking which of the countries are not members of Eurasian Economic Union. Armenia is a member. Azerbaijan is not. Belarus is a member. Uzbekistan is not a member. Uzbekistan and Azerbaijan are not members. So correct answer is 2 and 4 only. Option D is the right answer. So majority of them have got the wrong answer. Only 40% students have given the right answer. So just a little bit of background about Eurasian Economic Union. It was established formally in 2014 by Russia with 2 of its closest allies, Belarus and Kazakhstan. One from Central Asia, one from Eurasia, from Eastern Europe. So they established the economic union to build economic relations between them, but Ukraine refused to join the initiative. So it's not a coincidence that Russia annexed the Crimean Peninsula in the same year. It was in 2014 that Russia attacked Ukraine and annexed the strategic Crimean Peninsula. Since then, Russia was sponsoring a separatist war in eastern Ukraine. And eventually, in 2022, it invaded the country, triggering the Russia-Ukraine war. So over the years, few other countries have joined this economic union, such as Armenia in 2015 and later Kyrgyzstan. So these 5 countries from the Eurasia region are part of this economic union, and it is relevant for us because India is also considering an FTA with Eurasian Economic Union. Now let's move on to question number 18. We are coming back to Africa. Which of the following regional economic communities are related to Africa? Within the large continent of Africa, there are many sub-regional groups as well. And they are in the news. India does engage with some of these sub-regional economic groupings of Africa. And you should at least know which group focuses on which region in Africa. If not all the details, which may not be relevant for the exam, you should at least know the names of the groupings and you should know which region does it focus upon. The 4 options given are ECOWAS, SADC, COMESA, CARICOM. Rohit Nayak says, I've never heard of these options. Don't worry, that is the purpose of the session. If you haven't heard about it, you will hear about them in the session and you will learn about them as well. So which of the following regional economic communities are related to Africa? Some of them are saying C. In fact, more than 50% have said C. Okay. That is 1, 2 and 3. Very good. That is indeed the correct answer. ECOWAS, SADC and COMESA. These are regional communities related to Africa, but CARICOM is not related to Africa. CARICOM is related to which region? CARICOM is related to which region, if not Africa? Latin America. Okay, can you be more specific? Can you be a little more specific? The Caribbean region. Very good. CARICOM is an economic community of the Caribbean region. in the Latin America region. So in Africa, there are many sub-regional economic groups. Please take a look at them. India does work with some of them like COMESA, ECOWAS and SADC. COMESA stands for Common Market for Eastern and Southern African countries. India has a lot of investments in East Africa and Southern Africa. Alright, so some of these countries have come together to form COMESA. Then you have SADC, Southern African Development Community. It brings together some of the Southern African countries led by South Africa, and India works closely with SADC as well. Then we have ECOWAS, Economic Community of West African States. Of late, we have renewed our interest in West Africa. There are many Indian companies investing here, right? We have very huge diplomatic stakes because we are competing with China and other global powers in Africa. We have taken up many developmental projects. We are making strategic investments. The idea is to step up our influence, gain access to African resources, and build a mutually beneficial partnership. So in that regard, these sub-regional economic groupings become very, very critical, very important for India. Is that clear? Now let's look at question number 19. Question number 19. How many of the below given statements are correct? We are moving towards the Europe region. The Council of Europe was founded in 1949. The organization is one of the primary organs of the European Union. The Budapest Convention on Cybercrime was brought out by the Council of Europe. Which of the statements, how many of the given statements are correct? The poll is live. I'll explain the key points about Council of Europe. It's a very important topic. Even recently, it was in the news. Recently, the Council of Europe has adopted the AI Convention just a few days ago. So because of all these developments, Council of Europe can come as a question in your prelims. 62% are saying option B. That is only 2. Okay, let's evaluate each statement and then we'll discuss about Council of Europe. The first statement is correct. The Council of Europe was set up in 1949 after the Second World War. Second World War had ravaged Europe. It had destroyed Europe. There were hostilities, tensions between all European powers. So to repair the damage caused by the rise of fascism, by the rise of extremist radical ideology, a grouping was set up by some of the Western democracies called Council of Europe. Now please don't confuse this with European Union. The EU is a distinct grouping. The EU is a separate political economic grouping which earlier was known as the European Economic Community. It later became European Union in 1990s. So EU is completely different. Council of Europe is completely different. The purpose of Council of Europe was to strengthen democracy, to promote human rights and establish rule of law in Europe, which had been destroyed by Second World War and the ideologies of fascism, right-wing extremism, etc. So with this intention, Council of Europe was established. Its primary focus is on strengthening democracies, establishing rule of law and protecting human rights. So statement 1 is correct, statement 2 is incorrect. It's not a primary organ of the EU, it's not even related directly to the EU. It's a distinct organization of its own. The third statement is correct. The Council of Europe has adopted a convention on cybercrime called the Budapest Convention. This is a correct statement. So option B is the right answer. Only 2 given statements are correct. In fact, India wants to join the Budapest Convention. We have considered joining the Budapest Convention because we might also get some assistance in tackling cyber crimes. This is the only such global convention that is there in the field of cyber crimes. As you know, many cyber crimes are transnational in nature. You will need international assistance to crack down on these cases, to get hold of the cyber criminals and the culprits. So there are advantages for India in joining the Budapest Convention. There are few drawbacks as well. The Ministry of Home Affairs, which is the nodal ministry for cyber crimes, is supporting India's entry to Budapest Convention. MHA has recommended that India should sign Budapest Convention and we should become a member so that we'll get assistance from these members to deal with cyber crimes. But however, the Intelligence Bureau has raised an objection. On national security grounds, the IB has rejected the idea of India joining Budapest Convention. Because as a member to the Cybercrime Convention, you will be required to share data. You will be required to integrate your networks. And this potentially could create a security loophole which could be exploited by a foreign power. So on security grounds, cyber security grounds, the IB has objected India's entry into Budapest Convention. So India has not signed or not become part of Budapest Convention. Understood? Now the last point. Recently, Council of Europe has adopted the AI Convention. The AI Convention on human rights, on rule of law. It essentially seeks to regulate AI technologies being developed by private companies and also by government entities and ensure that it does not undermine existing democratic principles, constitutional rights and fundamental rights and human rights. Because the misuse of AI or any rogue AI platforms and tools, they could lead to a violation of human rights, fundamental rights, such as your right to life, right to privacy, right to free speech and expression. So, Council of Europe has adopted the AI Convention just a few days ago. It's a trending topic, by the way, and it has adopted this framework, a framework convention on AI and human rights, democracy and rule of law. So that is the reason why the topic becomes very, very important. Now let's move on to question number 20. Question number 20, it's related to the FLAG grouping promotes relations between which two regions or which types of countries. Does it promote relations between East Africa and least developed countries, East Asia and Latin America, Caribbean and North America, East Europe, West Asia and Central Asia? What's the right answer? Take a few seconds. I don't know if you guys have heard about the FLAG grouping, but it has been in the news over the last few years. It's not just a new topic, it's a slightly old topic as well. 39% are saying option B. Very good. So these students are correct. It focuses on East Asia and Latin America. Two very distinct regions located geographically apart from each other. So FLAG stands for the Forum for East Asia Latin America Cooperation. The purpose is to bring the East Asian powers together with the Latin American countries. So it focuses on building political relations, economic ties between them, and there are 36 member countries from East Asia and Latin America. So just these basic points are enough. Since FLAG is not directly of interest to India, right? UPSC will not go into the depth. Only the basic pointers here would be essential for our exam. So with this, we have completed the most important regional groupings and organizations. 20 questions. So now we will move on to the next segment. We are going to discuss United Nations, its related organs and various UN agencies, specialized agencies. And we are going to take up many questions over the next 1 hour. So do let me know what you think of the session. How is it going? This is the last session in Conclave Prelims. If you guys are liking it, benefiting from the initiative, do press the like button. Do support our initiatives, comment more, and share the videos with other aspirants as well. All right, let's start with the next segment. Let's look at question number 21. So there is a description which has been given, right? And you need to figure out the description is referring to which organ of the United Nations. The question says it is the main policy-making organ of the UN, comprising all member states. It provides a unique forum for multilateral discussion on the full spectrum of international issues covered by the UN Charter. Each of the 193 member states of the UN, they have an equal vote. Which organ of the UN does this refer to? Is it referring to UN General Assembly, UN Security Council, UN Secretariat, or the UN Economic and Social Council? Very good. 84% students have got the right answer. I know it's a simple question, right? I'm using a mix of hard, moderate, and easy questions because that is exactly how the UPSC paper will be designed as well. The correct answer here is the UN General Assembly. The description given is referring to the UNGA. So the United Nations, which was established in 1945 through the UN Charter, right? The UN Charter is the constitution of the UN. It provided for the establishment of primary organs of the UN. Here in the flow chart, in the organization chart over here, you can see the 6 primary organs of the UN. UN General Assembly, UN Security Council, Economic and Social Council, Trusteeship Council, International Court of Justice, and the UN Secretariat. So what does the UN General Assembly do? The UNGA has universal membership. It has 193 member states. All the recognized sovereign states of the world have a membership at UNGA, which makes UNGA a democratic, inclusive body. It does not exclude any country. All the existing sovereign states are members of UNGA. And the best part is that all the members have an equal vote. They all have an equal vote on the decisions, the resolutions that are adopted by the UN General Assembly. So many critical issues of international importance are discussed at UNGA, resolutions are tabled, they are voted upon, and all 193 member countries have an equal vote. Be it United States, a developed nation, or be it a poor country, right? Every nation, they have an equal right, equal vote at UN General Assembly. So it is one of the key policy-making, decision-making bodies of the UN along with UN Security Council. Is that clear? So there is a president who is elected to the General Assembly, right? Each country will take the role of presidency of UNGA turn by turn. So this is done through an election. They serve a 1-year term. Right? So the member countries can contest and one of them gets to hold the presidency of UNGA for a term of 1 year. So the country holding the presidency of UNGA gets to set the agenda. So that is the advantage. Now, other important point is that at UNGA, parliamentary process is followed. When deciding upon issues or when voting upon resolutions, parliamentary processes are adopted. Just like a simple majority or special majority is needed in the Indian Parliament, for example, to get bills passed. Similarly, at UNGA, different types of majorities are provided under the UN Charter. For simple decisions, a simple majority is sufficient, but for major decisions like including a new UN member or let's say for reforms of the UN, right, for such big decisions, special majority would be necessary. So these are some important points that you should be familiar with regard to the UN General Assembly. Now, let's look at question number 22. Consider the following statements with regard to the UN Security Council, the UNSC, the UN Security Council. The UNSC has primary responsibility under the UN Charter for the maintenance of international peace and security. What do you think? Is this statement correct or wrong? Does UNSC really have primary responsibility according to UN Charter when it comes to international peace and security? Is it correct or wrong? Yes or no? Correct? Okay. You're absolutely right. This statement is correct. Members of UNSC have unequal voting powers. Again, let me know in the comments, yes or no. Members of UNSC, think who are the members of UNSC. Do they have unequal voting powers? Yes, absolutely right. This statement is correct as well. Coming to the last statement, India has never held the presidency of UNSC. Correct or incorrect? Has India been a member of UNSC? Have we been a part of UN Security Council? Have we held the presidency? Some are saying yes, some are saying no. I knew this statement would be confusing. All right, this is incorrect. India has held presidency of UNSC for 8 terms. Is that clear? Now let me explain some key points about UN Security Council. The UNSC happens to be the most powerful organ of the UN, even more than UN General Assembly. And that is the irony about UN. Even though UNGA is a universal democratic body where every country has membership, where everyone has an equal vote, the UNGA does not have the real authority, especially when it comes to security related issues. Be it the decision to impose economic sanctions, or be it the decision to counter terrorism, or deploy UN peacekeeping forces, or decisions related to nuclear non-proliferation, or decisions related to authorizing the use of force through which a coalition force can invade a country. Such critical powers have been vested with UN Security Council, which is an elite body of just 15 countries. UNSC has only 15 members, and 5 of them are permanent members, or as we call them as P5. The P5 countries include United States, United Kingdom, France, Russia, and China. These 5 hold permanent membership, and they exercise the most powerful vote, the veto. So any permanent member can veto any resolution. Now imagine, let's say there is a resolution moved against Israel or Russia in the context of the ongoing conflicts. If 192 countries are supporting the resolution, just one P5 member can defeat that. Hypothetically, a resolution against Russia will be defeated by China because Russia, China are on the same page. A resolution against Israel would be defeated by the US, even if 192 countries are supporting it. That is the power of the veto. So clearly there are unequal voting powers that exist here. The remaining 10 countries are non-permanent members. They are elected for a 2-year term. The non-permanent members get a term of 2 years and they are elected. There is a periodic election which is held on the basis of a geographical representation. For different regions, a certain number of seats are assigned. The countries from those regions can contest, and if they get the support at UN General Assembly, they get elected as a non-permanent member and they hold a 2-year term. So India has been elected as a non-permanent member 8 times. Most recently in 2021-2022, we held the 8th term at UNSC as a non-permanent member. And when you are a non-permanent member, you get to hold the presidency of UNSC for at least 2 months. So amongst the 15 members, the presidency rotates every month. Every month, the presidency will rotate amongst the 15 member countries between the 5 permanent and 10 non-permanent members. So during 24 months of membership, non-permanent membership, the country will get to hold at least 2 months of presidency. So India has held close to 16 months of presidency. That's why third statement is incorrect. What's the right answer? Option B. Only 2 given statements are correct about UN Security Council. Now let's move on to question number 23. Which is the principal body of the UN for coordination and implementation of development goals? Is it UN Development Programme, UN Economic and Social Council, UN Environment Programme, or UNESCO? Please focus on the question. Which is the principal body? It's like a nodal authority. Amongst all the UN organs, agencies, etc., there is one UN body which is considered as the principal body for development related initiatives. Be it your Millennium Development Goals, your Sustainable Development Goals, which deal with tackling hunger, poverty, climate change. These are the socio-economic agendas of the UN. So which body of the UN is considered as the principal body? 48% are saying option A. See, again, that is the trick in the question here. I know many of you assumed it would be UNDP just because it's UN Development Program. You are right, UNDP deals with development initiatives, but it's not the principal body. This is where you have to be careful. Don't jump to the answers just by looking at such words. The correct answer actually is B, the UN Economic and Social Council, also called the ECOSOC, the Economic and Social Council of the United Nations. So this is the principal body for all the development programs. Is that clear? Understood? Now let me explain what is ECOSOC, what is its role. So of course it is one of the primary organs of the UN, and it's like a think tank of the UN. Just like we had Planning Commission in India, or now we have the Niti Aayog, right, as a planning body, as a think tank, which comes out with welfare programs, socio-economic initiatives, developmental programs. Similarly, ECOSOC drives the development agenda of the United Nations. It consists of 54 members, which are elected by the General Assembly for 3-year terms. The composition is very important. There are 14 specialized agencies of the UN which directly work with ECOSOC. So various development agendas of the UN are implemented through the Economic and Social Council. So even here the members are elected through a geographical quota. There is a quota system at most of the UN platforms, right, wherever elections are held, to ensure that there is equitable geographical representation. The world is divided into different regions, and from each region a certain number of seats are assigned. So the countries belonging to that region can contest for the seats which are vacant, and they get a chance to get elected to such UN bodies. So there are 54 members elected by the General Assembly for 3-year overlapping terms, and for the purpose of election there is a geographical quota to ensure equitable representation for all the regions. So this is about the ECOSOC. All the major development programs like Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals, they're all conceptualized by the ECOSOC, driven by the ECOSOC. Let's look at question number 24. Consider the following statements regarding International Court of Justice, ICJ. Statement 1 says ICJ may entertain only 2 types of cases. It can act as a dispute settlement body between 2 member states. It can take up any individual's complaint against rogue countries violating international law. How many of the above statements is or are correct? ICJ is another topic which is extremely important for us, because recently India-Pakistan fought a case at ICJ when an Indian national, Kulbhushan Jadhav, was arrested by Pakistan on charges of espionage and terrorism, and he was delivered the death penalty. India filed a case against Pakistan approaching ICJ, and we brought a stay order against the death penalty for Kulbhushan Jadhav. And also, South Africa has dragged Israel to ICJ and filed a case of genocide. It has alleged that Israel is committing a genocide in Gaza against the Palestinian population. Because of these recent developments, ICJ becomes very, very important. The static portion related to it becomes important. So ICJ is also a principal organ. It's the principal judicial body of the UN. All right. Any idea where is it located? Where is it headquartered? Because United Nations is headquartered in New York, in the US. So General Assembly, your Security Council, even Economic Social Council, they're all headquartered in New York. But how about ICJ? Where is it headquartered? Very good. It's headquartered at The Hague in Netherlands, at the Peace Palace, which is a administrative building that hosts many judicial tribunals and arbitration bodies. It's like the judicial capital of the world. Right? So in the city of Hague in Netherlands, ICJ is seated. It's the only primary organ of the UN to be located outside of the United States. All the other primary organs are in New York. So it's a judicial body and its rulings are binding. It can take up two types of cases. Its prime mandate is to entertain only two types of petitions. One, to resolve any dispute between two member states, two or more member states. Let's say Pakistan filing a case against India, or India filing a case against Pakistan, or let's say US filing a case against some country. So any two UN member states can approach ICJ and file cases to settle the disputes. That is one of the primary mandates of ICJ. So statement 1 and 2 becomes correct. It can entertain only two types of cases, and one of them is to resolve disputes between UN member states. In these cases, the orders passed by ICJ are legally binding because as part of UN Charter, the orders and directives of ICJ become binding on UN member states. Since all the 193 member states have accepted the UN Charter, the rulings of ICJ become legally binding on them. Is that clear? They can't violate. If they violate, there could be sanctions through UN Security Council. So statement 1 and 2 are correct. So the other type of case ICJ can take up would be any advisory opinion sought by a UN body or any UN agency. Any specialized agency of the UN, for example, UNESCO, or let's say International Maritime Organization, right? Or World Meteorological Organization. Any such UN related body, they can approach ICJ for legal advice to get an advisory opinion, and this is not binding on them. It's only advisory in nature, right? So these are the only two types of cases ICJ will entertain. Individuals can't go and file cases. An individual can't go file a case against a rogue country. This is completely absurd. It's not part of the mandate of ICJ, so statement 3 becomes incorrect. Understood? So what's the right answer? Option B. Only two given statements are correct. Now let's look at the composition of ICJ as well. So here I have given the two types of cases ICJ deals with. Now let's take a look at the composition. How many judges are present? How are they elected? This is also very crucial because recently an Indian judge has been elected, Dalveer Bhandari, former judge of the Supreme Court, contested the elections at ICJ with India's diplomatic backing. We fought a legendary election against United Kingdom. There was one seat which was open, right, and the battle was between India and UK. And India finally got the support of most of the countries, and Dalveer Bhandari from India got elected as a ICJ judge, and currently he is serving a term. So because of that, the composition of ICJ is also important. So there are 15 judges in total elected for 9-year terms by both UN General Assembly and Security Council. Elections are held in both Security Council and General Assembly, and finally these judges are elected. So 1/3 of them are elected every 3 years in a manner similar to our Rajya Sabha elections, and they are also eligible for re-election. Understood? But please remember one important point. These judges, once they get elected, they no longer represent their country. They are not representatives or diplomats of their nation. They are not there to protect the interests of their nation. They are here as global judges. So Dalveer Bhandari is no longer an Indian judge. Dalveer Bhandari is essentially a neutral, unbiased judge. So these judges are not representatives or diplomats of their nations. Once they are elected, they are expected to behave in a neutral manner, be unbiased. So that is a very important feature of the ICJ and its judges. Now let's move on to question number 25. Let's take a quick look at this question related to the UN Secretary General. Consider the following. The UN Secretary General is appointed by UN General Assembly based on elections held amongst all 193 member states. The Trusteeship Council of UN suspended its operations owing to its failure to achieve its mandate. Which of the statements is or are correct? Just two statements. I think this shouldn't take much time. 38% are saying option A. All right, let me give you the answer. Both the statements are wrong. Both the given statements are incorrect. Neither one nor two. Option D is the right answer. Why? I'll explain that. UN Secretary General heads the UN Secretariat. UN Secretariat is another principal organ of the UN. So it basically helps in carrying out the administrative function of the UN, the day-to-day executive action of the UN. So all decisions of the Security Council, General Assembly, they are implemented by the UN Secretariat. So this organ of the UN is headed by the Secretary General. Currently, for example, Antonio Guterres, right, is the UN Secretary General. So how is the Secretary General appointed? There is no election. There is no election, and in fact, General Assembly has no authority here. The Security Council will recommend a candidate to the UNGA, and UNGA should blindly appoint that person as the Secretary General. It's like how our Council of Ministers, headed by the PM, will advise the President of India regarding a certain appointment. The President should simply blindly appoint that person into that given position. So something similar to that. The Security Council will select a candidate. There is no election involved here, and usually it is a candidate supported by the US who gets appointed. The US has largely maintained its monopoly over the appointment of the Secretary General. So a candidate pushed by the US usually gets recommended to the General Assembly. General Assembly simply appoints this person as the UN Secretary General. That's why the statement is wrong. Next, Trusteeship Council. Trusteeship Council is another primary organ, but it no longer functions. It's not operating anymore. It shut down its operations in 1994 because it failed. It actually succeeded. It fulfilled its mandate. It completed the purpose for which it was set up. And that is why Trusteeship Council was wound up in the 1990s. This council was set up after the Second World War mainly to provide governance over the trusteeship territories. After the World War ended, there were around 11 trusteeship territories, which were basically the colonies of the Axis powers. So since they were not ready for independence, they couldn't govern themselves, or they couldn't have self-rule or independence, the UN was directly administering certain trusteeship territories. So Trusteeship Council was set up for this purpose. It would govern the trusteeship territories and prepare them for self-rule and independence. So over the decades from 1950s to 1990s, all these trusteeship territories became independent countries. So basically, its job was done. It was a success. Its mandate was fulfilled. It had nothing else to do. And Trusteeship Council was wound up. Its operations were suspended in 1990s. So both statements are wrong. Option D becomes the correct answer. Again, I've added the relevant points. It's nothing new. It's all what we have discussed. Whatever I've explained, the same points are provided here, just so that you have ready notes available if you have to carry out any last minute revision. Let's look at question number 26. The Addis Ababa Action Agenda of the UN is related to what? Look at the four options and try to answer this question. This again is a slightly old topic, but still very relevant. UPSC has not asked a question on this, so that's the reason why we have to cover this as part of the static portion of IR. 38% are saying option A, almost 38 to 41%. Addis Ababa Action Agenda. What is it related to? Majority of you have got the wrong answer. The correct answer is option B. It created a new global framework for financing the development goals under SDG, your Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. For that, financing is arranged for developing nations and least developed countries through this initiative, the Addis Ababa Action Agenda. It created a framework for channelizing or mobilizing funds and to finance the development initiatives under SDG. See, the ECOSOC, Economic and Social Council, which is the primary organ to promote the development initiatives, it came out with Millennium Development Goals that were implemented from 2000 to 2015. During this 15-year period, certain development goals were identified by the ECOSOC, and it worked with all the other organizations and the member countries to achieve those goals and targets. They focused on poverty, healthcare, education, etc. So as the MDG goals were expiring, Agenda 2030 was adopted by the UN, which is nothing but your SDG, Sustainable Development Goals. This is being implemented for the next 15 years from 2015 to 2030 till the end of this decade. So under SDG, 17 goals have been identified, which you can see over here. No poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, etc. It covers many important socio-economic challenges which are affecting the world, from gender inequality to pollution, climate change, etc. All these welfare issues are covered under the 17 goals, and under each goal there are specific targets. So to help achieve these targets, especially to help the poor countries, the least developed countries, they would need finance, they would need the support of others. So to channel and mobilize the funds needed, the Addis Ababa Conference, International Conference on Financing for Development, was hosted in Ethiopia in 2015, which led to the adoption of this action agenda, Addis Ababa Action Agenda. It's named after the capital of Ethiopia, where the conference was held. Is that clear? So it created a financing framework. It brought financing institutions like World Bank, IMF and others together with all the governments and created a funding mechanism or a financing framework to provide the required funds to implement these development goals under SDG targets. So that is what you need to understand from this important article. Next, let's look at question number 27. Which of the following is not a mandate of the UN Development Program? Which of the following is not a mandate of the UNDP? 3 statements have been given. Please take a look. Let's see how many of you can get this right. Assist UN member states to advance the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Impose penalties on non-cooperative countries. Publish the Human Development Report based on HDI. What's the right answer? You need to identify which of them is not a mandate of UN Development Program. 60% are saying B. Okay, let's check the statements. Statement 1 is correct. The UNDP does assist the member states in implementing the SDG goals, in trying to achieve the SDG targets. So 1 is absolutely correct. Statement 2 is wrong. UNDP has no powers to penalize a country or impose any kind of penalties on non-cooperative countries. This power is not available to UNDP. It's only UN Security Council which can impose any kind of penalties or sanctions. Such powers don't exist with UNDP, so it's incorrect. The third statement is correct. It publishes the most important report, the Human Development Report based on Human Development Index. So 1 and 3 are correct, but question is asking you to identify which of the following is not a mandate. So 2 is the only incorrect statement. Option B becomes the correct answer. Now, please take a look at the basic facts related to UNDP. It was set up in 1965 by UN General Assembly. It's a very important fact. There are 36 countries which are part of the UNDP's executive board that take all the decisions. They are essentially elected on a rotational basis, and it is entirely funded by the voluntary contributions of the UN member states. So understanding the composition, the mandate, role, and as well as the funding of such UN programs and agencies is very important for our exams. All right. Now let's talk about the reports, especially the HDR, Human Development Report, the most important, most popular report of UNDP. It essentially brings out the extent or level of human development in a particular country. It is based on the concept of HDI, Human Development Index, which was formulated, conceptualized by two legendary economists from India and Pakistan. India's Amartya Sen and Pakistan's Mehboob ul Haq, they devised the concept of human development, how we can quantify human development. They came out with a verifiable methodology and they used certain scientific parameters through which you can gauge the extent of human development in any given country. It was developed in 1990s and later it was adopted by UNDP. The UNDP used this model, fine-tuned it to bring out the HDI index, which is published through the Human Development Report. So in the HDR report, the HDI index, which is used to rank the countries based on their performance, there are three important parameters which are used, and you should know about this. The three parameters which help in measuring human development. One is related to health. That is, long and healthy life is the first dimension. Under this dimension, parameters such as or indicators such as life expectancy at birth, it is measured and computed as part of this composite index. Next is education. That is knowledge, which is the second dimension. It is captured through indicators such as expected years of schooling and mean years of schooling. This data tells you about the extent of fundamental schooling that exists in a country. And finally, the third dimension is standard of living. A decent standard of living, which is captured through GNI, gross national income per capita, in dollar terms, in PPP dollar terms. These are the three dimensions and the respective indicators that are used to compute the Human Development Index, based on which countries are ranked on the Human Development Report. So having basic knowledge about this is very important. Now let's look at question number 28. Let's look at question number 28. How many of the below given statements are correct with regard to World Food Programme? The World Food Programme is independent of the UN system. It was established by the UN Development Programme. India has not engaged with the World Food Programme as it is self-sufficient. Take a few seconds and try to give me the right answer. How many of the statements are correct? That is the question which has been asked. World Food Programme is independent of the UN. It was established by UN Development Programme. India has not engaged with World Food Programme as we are self-sufficient. %, they are saying option A. Again, majority of them are getting the wrong answer. All the three statements are wrong. All three given statements are incorrect. Option D is the right answer. Why? See, World Food Programme is very much part of the UN system. It's within the UN family. It's not distinct or it's not independent of it. All right? It is considered as the world's largest humanitarian agency, established in 1961, and it was set up by Food and Agriculture Organization and UN General Assembly. It was not established by the UN Development Programme. This is incorrect. It was established by the FAO, Food and Agriculture Programme, which is a specialized agency of the UN, along with UN General Assembly in 1961. So as the world's largest humanitarian agency, World Food Programme delivers food aid. It provides food aid to extremely poor countries where food security is a challenge, where there is massive hunger, malnutrition due to poor development. Such countries are assisted through World Food Programme. Then war zones and conflict hit places, where there is a critical shortage of food. In such places, World Food Programme functions to provide food aid to the victims of conflict. So it plays a critical role as far as human rights are concerned. It's the largest humanitarian agency in the world, and India works closely with World Food Programme. See, we might be self-sufficient today, but through World Food Programme, we can assist others. The reason why I picked the topic is because recently when Afghanistan was taken over by the Taliban in 2021, it triggered a food crisis in Afghanistan that led to food shortages, which was affecting the Afghan people. So India delivered food aid to the people of Afghanistan through the World Food Programme. We channeled the aid through the World Food Programme because we had not recognized the Taliban regime. Even now, right, we haven't officially recognized Taliban government. We don't have official relations with Taliban. We are talking to Taliban, negotiating with them, but we don't have official relations. We haven't recognized the Taliban regime. So it would have been inappropriate on India's part to deliver food aid through the Taliban regime. That is why we worked with World Food Programme. Pakistan permitted the movement of the food aid through its territory. It gave transit access, and India delivered the food aid to the people of Afghanistan through World Food Programme. That is why the topic is very important. It's headquartered in Rome, and it functions on the basis of voluntary donations and funds given by governments and organizations. All right, please note down the important report which is related to World Food Programme, the Global Report on Food Crisis. See, asking questions about reports published is a favorite topic for UPSC. Over the last few years, it has asked many such questions. So, Global Report on Food Crisis gives us a lot of information regarding food insecurity in the world. It is brought out through the Global Network Against Food Crises by the Food Security Information Network, which is co-sponsored by Food Agriculture Organization, World Food Programme, and International Food Policy Research Institute. So knowing about these important reports published by the organizations is also very important. Now coming to question number 29, consider the following statements. It is related to the specialized agencies of the UN. Please go ahead, read the three statements. Try to give me the right answer. There are 17 specialized agencies working with the UN. Sometimes a reference is made to just 15 specialized agencies because the World Bank group is made up of 3 specialized agencies. UN specialized agencies are international organizations working with the UN in accordance with relationship agreements between each organization and the United Nations. How many of the above statements is or are correct? So now we are moving away from the main United Nations and we are focusing on the specialized agencies of the UN. So we are entering the next segment of UN and international organizations. 57% are saying option C. All 3 are correct. Okay, let's check the statements and then we'll know the right answer. Statement 1 is definitely correct. A total of 17 specialized agencies are associated with the United Nations. There is a reference made to only 15 of them because the World Bank group is actually made up of 3 specialized agencies. So if you count them individually, you have 14 plus 3, that is total of 17 specialized agencies. So both statement 1 and 2 are correct. If you consider these agencies linked to the World Bank, which are part of the World Bank group collectively, then you have only 15 specialized agencies. So both are correct. Statement 3 is also correct. UN specialized agencies, they have entered into a relationship agreement with the UN. These 17 agencies, which I'm going to mention, they have a individual working relationship agreement with the UN system, with the UN organization. And they are called the specialized agencies. They work closely with UN. They are part of UN's mandate, right? So they have this working relationship through an agreement that has been signed between the organization and the United Nations. So those agencies are called specialized agencies. So all 3 are correct. Option C is the correct answer. Now, let me give you a related question. This is related to it, and then we'll discuss more about specialized agencies. Question number 30. Which of the following is a specialized agency of the UN? We have 4 options. Select the answer from the code given below. FAO, ICAO, International Civil Aviation Organization, International Labour Organization, International Maritime Organization. What's the right answer? Which of the following is or are specialized agencies of the United Nations? More than 50% are saying D. Very good. 1, 2, 3, 4. All the 4 organizations mentioned here, they hold the status of specialized agency to the United Nations. So as I told you, there are a total of 17 specialized agencies, and you can take a look at them over here. The entire list has been provided. I have taken this screenshot from the UN website itself. So you have a total of 17 specialized agencies if you consider the 3 institutions of the World Bank as separate specialized agencies. You have IBRD, International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, International Development Association, and International Finance Corporation. So collectively, these 3 make up the World Bank group. So 14 plus 3, you have 17. But if you consider World Bank group as one collective institution, then you have only 15 specialized agencies. So they all work with the ECOSOC. Since Economic Social Council is the developmental organ, right? These specialized agencies work with ECOSOC. So now we are going to get into the details of these specialized agencies, because UPSC tends to ask a lot of questions. If you look at PYQs, the previous question papers, you actually find a lot of related questions based on specialized agencies of the UN. So let's cover some of the important ones through a series of questions. Let's start with question 31. Which of the following is or are associated with the Food and Agriculture Organization? There are 3 options given: Codex Alimentarius Commission, International Plant Protection System, State of the World's Forests. Which of the 3 is or are associated with FAO? The poll will be live very soon. Try to give me the right answer. Let's see how many of you can answer this. Codex Alimentarius Commission was recently in the news. So if you have been reading newspapers, you would know whether it is connected to FAO or not. Majority of the students are voting for D, 1, 2, and 3. Very good. That is the correct answer. All the 3 are related to the Food and Agriculture Organization. So let's quickly understand the role of FAO, the composition, and what are these 3 initiatives of FAO. The Food and Agriculture Organization, as the name itself tells you, it focuses on food-related issues and agriculture-related issues. Its goal is to tackle challenges related to food security, help the member countries of the UN to increase their agricultural production, to deal with any challenge in agriculture, be it the lack of rainfall, lack of irrigation, be it the problems created by pests, be it the long-term impact of climate change and global warming, right? So all these are issues of concern for the FAO. It has 195 members, 194 countries, and the European Union hold membership of FAO, and all the decisions are taken by the FAO Council. There is a decision-making body within the FAO called the FAO Council that consists of 49 members of the UN who are elected for 3 years. Understood? So this is the highest decision-making body of Food and Agriculture Organization. It is headquartered in Rome, and it brings out these important reports, the flagship reports of FAO. Please make a note of this. The state of food and agriculture, state of world fisheries and aquaculture, and look at the third one, state of world's forests. This is what was given in the question. It brings out the report on the status of forests around the world. So it's one of the publications of FAO. So that is why it was correct. state of agricultural commodity markets, state of food security and nutrition, or also called state of food insecurity. So these are the major reports of FAO. Now, coming to the other two initiatives, what is Codex Alimentarius Commission? This essentially sets the food safety standards. See, right now, food safety is a trending topic. You might have read about Indian spice brands like MDH, Everest being banned by many countries because they contained toxic substances. You might have read about the high sugar content of certain products by Western food companies like Nestle, for example. Right? So food safety, then health with regard to food has become a priority. Even on social media, food safety is a trending topic. Today you have many influencers, right, encouraging healthy dietary and food practices and discouraging you from adopting a diet which is heavy in ultra processed food. So food safety is a trending issue, and the global standards for food safety is set through the Codex Alimentarius Commission. Our Food Safety and Standards Authority, the FSSAI. In India, we have FSSAI, Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, established through the FSSAI Act that establishes the food safety standards in India. Right? It is the food regulator. So these standards followed by FSSAI are in line with the global standards established under Codex Alimentarius Commission, which is an initiative of FAO. Next, International Plant Protection Convention of 1952. This is also an initiative of the FAO to protect the plant species, to prevent the spread, the global spread of pests, which are hazardous to various cultivated plants and wild plants, to protect the plant species of the world. So all three are initiatives of FAO. That is why all three were correct. Now let's look at question number 32. Consider the following statements. International Civil Aviation Organization was established through the Montreal Convention in 1999. That is the first statement related to ICAO. It is headquartered in London, United Kingdom. India has reconsidered its ICAO membership over a recent controversy. How many of the above statements is or are correct? So now we are entering the last hour of the session. So I'm going to pick up the pace a little, but we will not compromise on the quality of the discussion, right? We will look at the statements given, we will get the right answer, and we will ensure the adequate explanation is also provided. But let's pick up the pace. I want you to quickly participate in the poll so that we can proceed to the next question as quickly as possible. The first statement is wrong. Second statement is also wrong. How about the third statement? The third statement is also wrong. It's incorrect. All three given statements are incorrect. So right answer is option D, none of the above. So let's understand the topic in slight detail. The International Civil Aviation Organization, it was established through the Chicago Convention, not through the Montreal Convention. That was deliberately added to confuse you, because you might have read that ICAO has something to do with Montreal in Canada. That is correct, because it is headquartered in Montreal in Canada. So that is the trick part in the question. It was not set up through Montreal Convention. It was set up through Chicago Convention of 1944, also called the Convention on International Civil Aviation. It is headquartered in Montreal, Canada, and India has had no issues with ICAO. Third statement is absurd. Recently, there has been no controversy. There is no question of India withdrawing the membership. So India works with ICAO with regard to air safety, with regard to aviation safety standards. So it has set up the Air Navigation Commission to establish common set of standards for civil aviation and navigation. It has set up the Aeronautical Message Handling System to create a common protocol for communication between aircrafts and with air traffic control, etc. It has also set up an International Standard Atmosphere Initiative to track meteorological, climatological developments which could be hazardous for civil aviation traffic. So from India, it is the DGCA, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, which coordinates with ICAO. So it sets the aviation safety standards, the regulatory standards, and we follow and implement them. So it's governed by an assembly consisting of all the UN members, which meets once in every 3 years and updates the civil aviation standards. It has a council that runs the day-to-day functioning that consists of 36 members elected for a 3-year term. I'm trying to give you all the relevant information so that you have everything in one place, because with only 2 weeks left for the exam, it should be as easy as possible, as simple as possible for you to revise everything. That is my purpose, that is my intention. So tomorrow, if you sit for, let's say, even half a day, use all the notes that we have used in the various Conclave Prelim sessions, you should be able to revise the entire IR portion in just half a day. So that is the whole idea. More revisions, the better you will perform. Please remember this. You can't clear this exam just by reading once. You need multiple revisions. That is the entire purpose of this crash course. So if you agree with me, if you have benefited from what we are doing, do support us with your likes, your comments, and subscribe to our channel. Now let's look at question number 33. Which of the following UN specialized agency was established by the Treaty of Versailles? Is it WHO, ITU, ILO, WMO? Very factual question, historical question. But this particular specialized agency is also in the news. So what's the right answer? Very good. 87% of them, they are giving the right answer. The correct answer is option C. It is the International Labour Organization, which was set up through the Treaty of Versailles. Now, Treaty of Versailles brought the First World War to an end. I'm sure many of you would know this who have studied world history. Right? World War I came to an end by 1918, and a peace treaty was signed, which is the Treaty of Versailles, that established the League of Nations, which is a predecessor international organization to the UN. So basically, when UN was set up in 1945, after Second World War, it replaced the League of Nations, which was set up in 1919 under the Treaty of Versailles. It was under this treaty that ended the First World War that ILO was established. So it is one of the oldest organizations. In fact, ILO is older than the UN itself. UN was set up in 1945 after Second World War, but ILO was set up after First World War in 1990. So later, it entered into an agreement with the UN, a relationship agreement, and it became a specialized agency of the UN in 1946. So since then, it has been setting labor standards. It brings out various conventions. You would have heard about ILO conventions that seeks to protect labor rights, promote labor welfare. It is the only international organization which has a tripartite arrangement, meaning there is representation for governments, the employers from the private industry, and as well as the workers, the unions that represent the workers around the world. So there is a representation for all the three stakeholders as far as labor rights and labor welfare is concerned. It's the only tripartite international organization giving representation for governments, the employers, and the workers. So 187 member states are part of it. They strictly follow these standards brought out by ILO. It was even awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for its incredible role in promoting labor welfare. Understood? It's very relevant for India because recently we have brought out a new set of labor codes, and there is some controversy surrounding the labor laws of India. Of course, I'll not go into it. That would be a deviation. But since labor rights, labor welfare has been in the news, there could be a question, a static factual question on the ILO. It publishes these important reports. Please note down, it is headquartered in Geneva in Switzerland, and it brings out the World Employment and Social Outlook, which is a very important report. It also publishes Care Work and Care Jobs for the Future of Decent Work, the World of Work Report, Global Wage Report. These are the major publications of the ILO. Now coming to question 34. Consider the following. UN General Assembly is the decision-making body of WHO. Global Nutrition Report and Ambient Air Pollution Report are some of the reports published by WHO. Which of the above statements is or are correct? The poll is live. Most students are getting the right answer. Okay, now midway it is changing. Many students have switched to B. Some of them are saying C. Okay. The first statement is incorrect. UNGA is not the decision-making body of WHO. WHO has a decision-making body called the World Health Assembly. The World Health Assembly is the decision-making body. Is that clear? So all the members of the WHO are part of the World Health Assembly. A few years ago, India held the presidency as well. Just a few years ago, India held the presidency at the World Health Assembly. So it's not UNGA. That's why statement 1 is wrong. Statement 2 is correct. WHO publishes some very important reports. Global Nutrition Report, Ambient Air Pollution Report. And statement 2 is correct. So what's the right answer? Option B, 2 only is the correct answer. Now WHO has been in the headlines, especially since the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm sure all of you know WHO faced a lot of criticism with regard to the way in which it handled the pandemic, how it was ineffective in acting against China, which was not very transparent when it came to sharing information about the COVID-19 pandemic. Right? China was very opaque regarding the origin of SARS coronavirus 2. It triggered a huge controversy and a lot of criticism came up against WHO and its structure and its functioning. One reason why WHO is quite ineffective is because it has no enforcement powers of its own. Is that clear? It doesn't have any penal provisions it can impose on violating countries. It can only come out with some recommendatory guidelines and expect the member states to follow them. But every time there is a breakout of a contagious disease, most countries, they become very opaque. They don't share the information with WHO because they all have a fear that stigma will be attached to their country. That country would be isolated from the rest of the world. So most countries become very opaque. They don't share the relevant data, which actually defeats the purpose of global cooperation. That is when these novel pathogens get out of a country and they spread around the world, triggering epidemics and pandemics. So WHO was set up in 1948. It's governed through the World Health Assembly, headquartered in Geneva. Is that clear? Look at the governing body. The World Health Assembly, it meets annually. It has all the member states as part of it. It has an executive board consisting of 34 members. This is just additional information. This may not be asked, but just to be on the safer side, because you never know. UPSC can be very unpredictable. Also look at the important reports of WHO. The Global Nutrition Report, Ambient Air Pollution Report, the World Health, World Malaria Report, etc. Please note down all the reports given here. Right? It's very factual, nothing much to discuss, but such static questions have been asked. It can be asked again. So please make a note of this. Next, question number 35. Let's look at the 35th question. Which of the following organizations existed even before the establishment of the UN? You all know that UN was set up in 1945. So even before the UN, which of the given organizations existed? Bretton Woods institutions, Universal Postal Union, International Telegraph Union. Let's see how many of you can answer this. Which of the following organizations were set up even before the UN was established? 75% have said D. Option D, 1, 2 and 3. Very good. That is the correct answer. What do you mean by Bretton Woods institutions? These were the finance-related institutions that were set up in 1944 following the Bretton Woods Conference. Right? This gave birth to your World Bank and IMF. So they were set up in 1944, much before the UN was set up in 1945. Then coming to the International Telecommunication Union. Please note this down. This is the oldest international organization in the world. It was set up in 1865 and initially it was called the International Telegraph Union. Its purpose was to lay down common standards, common protocols for telegraph-based communication. Later, when telecommunication was introduced in the early part of 20th century, it was transformed into the International Telecommunication Union. So the Council has 48 members, they meet annually to lay down the global telecommunication standards. Then Universal Postal Union. This happens to be the second oldest international organization, established in 1874 through the Treaty of Berne. Its goal, its purpose is to again establish these common standards for postal communication, and India Post closely works with the Universal Postal Union. It can be a very important topic because recently India Post organized an event in India as part of Universal Postal Union's initiatives. So that is why the topic is relevant. Then finally, coming to the Bretton Woods institutions, World Bank and IMF. They represent the global financial architecture set up in 1944 through the Bretton Woods Conference. World Bank is made up of three institutions, which are the specialized agencies of the UN, the IBRD, IDA and IFC. These are development institutions providing loans, funds for developmental projects, for welfare projects like rural development, education programs or healthcare programs, etc. Even several welfare programs of the government of India and several state governments in India, they are funded by World Bank funds. IMF performs a very different role. IMF essentially provides for contingency funding or emergency funding when a country is facing a liquidity crisis or a foreign exchange crisis. Like, for example, India faced a balance of payments crisis in 91. Recently, Sri Lanka faced a major forex crisis. Pakistan is going through a serious foreign debt problem. So countries facing a liquidity challenge or such economic crunch, they receive a bailout from IMF. So they are headquartered in Washington, DC, and these are the major reports that they publish. Please make a note of this. Very important fact. IMF publishes World Economic Outlook, Global Financial Stability Report. UPSC has asked some prelims questions on this. So please focus on World Bank reports, Global Economic Prospects, World Development Report, Logistics Performance Index, etc. All these are very important. Next, question number 36. The Greenhouse Gas Bulletin. It is published by which organization? The Greenhouse Gas Bulletin. It has been in the news. That's why I have picked the topic. Which organization publishes the Greenhouse Gas Bulletin? Take a few seconds. It's very simple, straightforward. 83% are saying C. World Meteorological Organization. Very good. That is indeed the correct answer. The WMO, which is also a specialized agency of the UN, publishes the Greenhouse Gas Bulletin. So the WMO was set up in 1950 to promote meteorological research, to lay down common standards in the field of meteorology. Right? The meteorological data is very crucial for early warning, forecasts, for agriculture, for economic activities. Meteorological research is absolutely crucial, and WMO plays that lead role. So it collects meteorological data, information, coordinates with the countries, shares the data with each other, and it also plays a key role in tracking global warming and climate change. In fact, WMO was one of the institutions that established the IPCC, your Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the leading climate science think tank, founded in 2007 by WMO and the UN Environment Program. Sorry, it was not founded in 2007. Just make a correction. IPCC was founded in 1980s, in 1988. Because of its incredible work, which has helped the Climate Change Convention, right? IPCC has brought out these reports, which is extremely valuable as far as climate science is concerned. So in recognition of its efforts, it was awarded the Nobel Prize in 2007. So IPCC was an initiative of WMO and UN Environment Program. It's headquartered in Geneva, and these are the important reports. Greenhouse Gas Bulletin, Global Seasonal Climate Update, State of the Global Climate, United in Science Report, State of Climate Services Report. So just having basic knowledge about these facts, these static facts, could be relevant for a factual question. Let's look at question number 37. Consider the following statements regarding International Maritime Organization. IMO was established in 1948. IMO has listed India as among the 10 states with the largest interest in international seaborne trade, India has acceded to the Hong Kong International Convention for the safe and environmentally sound recycling of ships. This is a very specific question. It's not very easy to answer. IMO is very crucial. It has been in the news. I'll tell you why IMO is crucial for the upcoming exam. There are some recent developments. So let's see how many of you can answer this. Many students are saying D, some of them are saying B. Okay, I'll give you the right answer. The correct answer is option D. All the three statements are right. It was set up in 1948 as a specialized agency of the UN. It has recognized India as one of the top 10 countries with the largest interest in international maritime trade or seaborne trade. India has a massive coastline of 7,500 odd kilometers. We have major ports, right? And our trade, our exports and imports are primarily carried out through the sea route. And India is one of the largest maritime powers. So India is recognized as one of the top 10 countries with the largest interest in international maritime trade. IMO has given that recognition to India. The third one is also correct. India has acceded to the Hong Kong International Convention for the safe and environmentally sound recycling of ships. See, IMO, that was founded in 1948, it's headquartered in London. Its primary purpose is to regulate international maritime shipping, to lay down regulations, to establish standards, including safety standards, as far as maritime trade, commercial shipping and maritime activities are concerned. So it has brought out many important conventions, such as the Marpol Convention of 1973. It basically deals with marine pollution caused by the commercial ships. So countries are obligated to follow the terms of these conventions to tackle marine pollution caused by commercial ships. There could be leakage of hazardous material, toxic substances, or an oil spill. So Marpol Convention places obligations on the states to deal with such incidents of marine pollution. The SOLAS Convention of 74, safety of life at sea. The seafarers, right? Those who work in the sea, those who work on ships, their lives are at risk because of various threats, from disasters to accidents, etc. So ensuring the safety of life at sea, rescuing those who are stranded, is a key obligation of all UN member states, which is codified under the SOLAS Convention. Then you have the Cape Town Agreement of 2012. It mandates minimum safety requirements for fishing vessels, right? And India is party to all these conventions and agreements. And one of the most important convention is the Hong Kong Convention for the safe and environmentally sound recycling of ships. It was brought out by IMO in 2009, but it has not come into force yet because the required number of ratifications have not been done. But India is a signatory. India has signed on to the Hong Kong Convention because India is a major market for ship recycling. You might have heard about the Alang shipyard in Gujarat. It's one of the world's largest ship breaking facilities. So all the old ships which are being decommissioned, they often head to developing countries like India where they are broken down. Problem is, ships contain very hazardous material from asbestos to sometimes even uranium and nuclear radioactive material, which can cause a lot of pollution and toxicity. So to ensure that breaking down of ships and recycling of ships is done in an environmentally safe and sound manner, the Hong Kong Convention was adopted. India has signed it, but it hasn't got the number of ratifications needed, so it has not come into force yet. Now, why is IMO relevant for this year's exam? Because recently, India has made a proposal, a very important proposal. We have submitted 3 papers to the legal committee, the expert legal committee of the IMO, following some recent incidents in the sea. I'm sure you know pirate attacks have gone up near Somalia and Horn of Africa and Gulf of Guinea. Plus, non-state actors like Houthi rebels of Yemen have started targeting commercial ships through drones and missiles. So basically, wars, conflicts and non-state actors are a major threat to maritime shipping and to the crew members right, who are working out in the sea, the seafarers essentially. India is deeply worried about the well-being of our seafarers. India is one of the biggest contributors in the world with regard to the merchant navy, right, who are involved in manning these commercial ships. That's why any shipping accident around the world, it's Indians who will suffer. If you remember the Baltimore bridge accident in the US, the entire crew was Indian. If you remember the recent detention of a ship by Iran near Hormuz Strait, following the tensions in the region, the crew was entirely Indian. So in some of the Houthi attacks, Indian ships were targeted, or ships carrying Indian crew members was targeted. So India is deeply worried about the safety of our seafarers. That is why we are pushing for an international convention through the IMO. India's idea is to secure the safety of seafarers through an international obligation, right? Especially due to piracy, other non-state threats, wars and conflicts. That is the reason why we have proposed this new idea through a legal paper submitted to the IMO. Let's look at question number 38. The Global Innovation Index is published by. Take a few seconds. It's a very simple, straightforward question. Who publishes the Global Innovation Index? Is it the IMF, IBRD, the WIPO, or the UNIDO? All right, the correct answer is the WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organization. It's another specialized agency of the UN, set up in 1967, headquartered in Geneva. It basically promotes the protection of IPR, intellectual property rights. It creates a conducive ecosystem for protection of intellectual property rights, from patent laws to copyright regimes, right? They are brought out through the WIPO. Understood? And the major reports published by it are the World Intellectual Property Report and Global Innovation Index. Next, question number 39. Question number 39. Read the question. Again, a straightforward question, but not many of you would be aware of this. So it's a factual topic. Let's see how many of you can attempt this question and get the answer right. Which of the following is associated with UNIDO, United Nations Industrial Development Organization? The Berne Treaty, Lima Declaration, Madrid Protocol, Cartagena Convention. Aditi is asking, is the TRIPS of WTO part of WIPO? See, WIPO is an organization. TRIPS is an agreement. The TRIPS of WTO, trade-related intellectual property rights, that's a global framework, an agreement created for protection of intellectual property rights through World Trade Organization. So both are distinct. 58%, 60% are saying B. Very good. Lima Declaration is correct. So what is UNIDO? It is a specialized agency set up in 1966 by the General Assembly to promote industrial development, especially in the newly born countries, the newly independent nations that had gone through decolonization. In many Asian, African and Latin American countries, the industrial base had been destroyed by the colonial powers. Britain, France and other European colonial powers, they destroyed the native industries, right? The handicraft industry, they destroyed agriculture as well, and they eroded the scientific base and the industrial base that existed. So to help such countries which are gaining independence following decolonization, UNIDO was set up in 1966 to help transform the developing economies and the poor countries. So in 2013, Lima Declaration was adopted that calls for inclusive, sustainable industrial development. Because industrial development causes environmental damage. It causes pollution. It could lead to exploitation of natural resources. But to ensure that industrial development is done in an inclusive, sustainable manner, the 2013 Lima Declaration was adopted. It brings out the Industrial Development Report and is headquartered in Vienna. So just straightforward facts. If you know this, you will be able to answer any question. UPSC will not go beyond this. So now we are almost entering the last part of our discussion. Let's look at some important treaties and conventions quickly. And I have few questions on strategic projects and places that were in news. Let's look at question number 40. Consider the following. It's related to the Genocide Convention. Very, very important topic, because Russia and especially Israel both have been accused by some countries of committing a genocide. With regard to Russia's war in Ukraine, there have been allegations that Russia is committing a genocide against Ukrainians, but no country has taken any action. In case of Israel, it's accused of using disproportionate force in Gaza against Palestinians, and even a genocide case has been brought up by South Africa, as we were discussing, at the International Court of Justice. So given these conflicts, the Genocide Convention becomes very important. The Genocide Convention was the first legal instrument to codify genocide as a crime. Is it correct or incorrect? This statement is correct. It was the first legal instrument at the global level which codified genocide as a crime. I'll explain what is genocide. I'll come to it. It was the first human rights treaty unanimously adopted by UNGA. Correct or incorrect? This statement is also correct. Very good. Some of you are saying it's correct. It was the first human rights treaty that was unanimously supported by all the UN members at UNGA. The last statement, it was conceived largely in response to the atrocities committed during the Korean War. Correct or incorrect? Is this statement correct or incorrect? Very good. It is incorrect. It's wrong. It was not conceived in response to the atrocities committed in Korean War. It was conceived following the atrocities of the Second World War. And the irony is, the concept of genocide was developed by a Polish Jewish lawyer, Raphael Lemkin, who was deeply affected by the Holocaust committed by Nazi Germany under Adolf Hitler. Right? A genocide was committed against the Jews. Millions of them were exterminated across Europe under Hitler's Nazi Germany. Plus, during the course of the Second World War, massive violations were committed where entire communities were targeted on the lines of nationality, race, ethnicity, religion, etc. Imperial Japan committed brutal atrocities. Mussolini's Italy committed brutal atrocities. So following this, Raphael Lemkin, a lawyer, a Polish Jewish lawyer, he popularized the concept of genocide. He coined the term genocide. He campaigned around Europe, trying to get global support, diplomatic support, to bring out this convention so that the perpetrators of genocide can be punished. So, first, what is the right answer here? Only two of them are correct. Option B is the right answer. Now, what exactly constitutes an act of genocide? See, genocide is an organized attempt, usually by a state actor, to target and eliminate an entire community. Usually, the targeting is done on the lines of nationality or race or ethnicity or religion. Right? And there are 5 different acts that qualify as genocide under the terms of the Genocide Convention. It was adopted in 1948, and today it is seen as part of international law. It's part of customary international law, and the efforts of Raphael Lemkin and few European powers led to its adoption. It was unanimously adopted with complete global support. So there are 5 specific acts that constitute an act of genocide. So first, there has to be an intent to destroy an entire group of people. And within that intent, if there are 5 activities which are done, or 5 kind of exterminations which are done, they qualify to be known as an act of genocide. One, of course, is the direct killing of the members of the group, targeted killing and elimination of the group, causing bodily harm and mental harm through targeted violence against a particular group, imposing living conditions aimed at destroying the group. For example, cutting off essential supplies like food, water, medical supplies, electricity. Right? If you don't allow any basic facilities, the whole community can't survive. The entire community could be destroyed because of the curbing of the essential services. So this also constitutes to be called as an act of genocide. A deliberate attempt by usually a state to cut off any essential supply to a community. Right? And if the discrimination is on the basis of nationality, ethnicity, race, religion, etc., these acts are termed as genocide. Preventing births in the community. Deliberately trying to curb the population growth of a community. transferring the children forcibly out of the group so that the group's population doesn't grow. All these 5 acts are labeled as acts of genocide, and it is punishable under international law through the Rome Statute of 1998, which established the International Criminal Court. So these cases alleging genocide can be brought up at ICJ, International Court of Justice. So here one country, one state can file the charge against another state, like how South Africa has filed a case against Israel. At ICC, the individuals responsible, the individual leaders, officials who are part of the genocide, who are giving the orders, who are carrying out the genocide, they could be targeted at ICC under the Rome Statute. For example, against Putin, right? Arrest warrant has been issued by ICC. Right now, public prosecutor at ICC are considering issuing arrest warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu and other top Israeli leaders and officials on these similar charges. So that is the punishment available here. The individuals who are involved in ordering these acts, they can be punished, arrest warrants can be issued, and all the state parties are obligated. It's part of international customary law. Got it? So these are some important points about the Genocide Convention. Now coming to the Geneva Convention. The 1949 Geneva Conventions seeks to protect whom? This is question number 41. Let's see how many of you can answer this. Last 9 to 10 questions. We'll go through this quickly, don't worry. What's the right answer? The 1949 Geneva Conventions. It seeks to protect whom? The correct answer is all the 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let me explain this quickly. Because of the ongoing conflicts, Geneva Conventions is also in the news because of war crimes, crimes against humanity, etc. The 1949 Geneva Conventions, which were also brought out in the backdrop of Second World War, it lays the framework for the rules of engagement during a war or conflict. It basically prohibits certain kinds of attacks during war, during conflict. So it applies for the state parties. So governments and their armed forces are expected to follow the Geneva Conventions during any war or conflict. There are 4 conventions which are part of it. That's why collectively it's called Geneva Conventions. It mainly seeks to protect civilians who are not involved in the war. Innocent civilians, medics and aid workers who are providing aid, humanitarian aid. Right? They're not part of the conflict, so they can't be targeted. Then injured soldiers who have become non-combatants. See, soldiers in a war are legitimate targets. Military targets are legitimate targets. But if, let's say, soldiers are injured, if they're decapacitated, if they're no longer fighting the war, they are a non-combatant and they cannot be targeted, right, once they have become crippled or sick or wounded or injured. This is the purpose of Geneva Conventions. It establishes these ethical norms and guidelines and prohibits the countries from targeting civilians and non-combatants. The first Geneva Convention protects the wounded and sick soldiers on land who are fighting the war. Second Geneva Convention protects the wounded, sick and shipwrecked military personnel at sea during war. The third Geneva Convention offers protection to POWs, prisoners of war. How POWs have to be treated, how their basic rights have to be protected. And the fourth Geneva Convention protects civilians, including those in occupied territories like Palestine, for example. All right. So collectively, these 4 are called the Geneva Conventions. Next, question number 42. Ideas like the principle of non-refoulement is contained in which of these conventions? So please attempt the question. In the meantime, I'll give you the answer and quickly explain the topic as well. It's part of the 1951 Refugee Convention. Option C is the right answer. So in 1951, following the Second World War, Refugee Convention was adopted because Europe was burdened with the refugee problem. So to protect the basic rights of refugees and to help them grant asylum, this convention was adopted. So initially it was specific to Europe and European refugees. This was one reason why India never signed the Refugee Convention. Because one, it would place a obligation on the country, right? They have to accept refugees, give certain kind of treatment to the refugees and protect their rights. So since India was located in a very complicated neighborhood, we had dealt with partition violence and refugees during partition, right? And from all our neighboring countries, refugees were flowing into India. So India didn't want to take up any unnecessary obligation. Plus, Refugee Convention initially was only meant for the European context, the post-World War context. So that is why India chose not to sign the Refugee Convention. But later, the 1967 additional protocol was brought in to update the Refugee Convention and make it applicable globally. All right, it was expanded in its mandate through the 1967 additional protocol, and it is applicable in any context around the world. But still, India has not signed it because we don't want to take any such obligations. It will become an international commitment. See, even without signing the Refugee Convention, we have a great track record of accepting refugees and protecting their human rights. From Tibetan refugees to Tamil refugees to Bengali refugees to even Afghan and Myanmar refugees. We have accommodated all of them, right? So India takes a decision on a case-to-case basis, and we haven't signed the 1951 Refugee Convention and we haven't signed the 1967 additional protocol as well. Clear? Now let's look at what is principle of non-refoulement. This is seen as part of the basic human rights that are inherent to international customary law. Non-refoulement, the principle of non-refoulement essentially means that a country which is receiving refugees and asylum seekers, it can't forcibly send them back to a country or a place where they might face targeted violence. Let's say Rohingya refugees are coming into India. Why? Because they are being targeted in Myanmar. Myanmar's army and radical elements are targeting the Rohingyas. So to save their lives, they might enter India, seek asylum, seek refuge in India. Now, if India decides to forcefully deport them back to Myanmar, then India would be violating the principle of non-refoulement. Is that clear? We can't forcefully deport or send back a refugee or an asylum seeker to a place where they might face targeted violence. This is prohibited under international law. Doesn't matter whether you are a signatory to Refugee Convention or not. This is part of international customary law. It is seen as integral to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Understood? Now coming to question 43. It's related to Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Consider the following. UDHR was proclaimed by UN General Assembly in 1948. It was drafted by the US State Department. India is not a signatory to it. It is not legally binding. So I'll go ahead. I'll give you the answer as well, because I know the session would feel a little dragged, right? If you spend more time in answering the poll. We are almost at the end. So let's pick up the pace. Let's go through. So the first statement here, UDHR was proclaimed by UN General Assembly in 1948 is a correct statement. It was drafted by US State Department. It's incorrect. It was drafted by a UN committee which was appointed for this purpose, for protecting human rights. It was chaired by Eleanor Roosevelt, the first lady of US, the wife of F.D. Roosevelt. So this UN committee drafted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is a fundamental document with regard to protection of human rights. India is a signatory. Third statement is wrong. India is a signatory to UDHR. See, we have National Human Rights Commission, state human rights commissions, right? They are statutory bodies set up under the Protection of Human Rights Act. So we have adopted these laws in 1990s because we had to fulfill the commitment under UDHR. So India is a signatory. So 3 is incorrect. It is not legally binding. This is correct. UDHR is not legally binding, right? It is seen as part of customary international law, but it's not legally binding. So what's the right answer? Only 2. B is the correct answer. Next, question number 44. Consider the following pairs. This is the match the following type of question. Maritime limits defined under UN Convention on Law of the Sea has been given on the left. The extent of these maritime limits is given on the right. So please check which of the pairs are correctly matched. Territorial waters up to 24 nautical miles from baseline. Contiguous zone up to 12 nautical miles beyond exclusive economic zone. Exclusive economic zone up to 200 to 550 nautical miles. All the three pairs are incorrect. Option D, none of the above, is the correct answer. The UN Convention on Law of the Sea is always in the news, especially because of South China Sea tensions. Under UN clause, which was adopted in 1982, maritime limits are defined. So first we have territorial waters that extends to 12 nautical miles from the baseline. This is where the coastal state has territorial jurisdiction. Right? We have full jurisdiction here. All the laws will apply here. Our authorities will have full jurisdiction within the territorial waters. Beyond this, you have contiguous zone that extends to another 12 nautical miles from the territorial waters. But the moment you cross territorial waters, you're already entering international waters. Outside of territorial waters, we have limited jurisdiction in contiguous zone. Only in certain areas like security, pollution, taxes and customs, tackling crime. Only in these specific areas we will have jurisdiction in contiguous zone. But we are already in international waters because outside of territorial waters, you have international waters. Next, you have EEZ, Exclusive Economic Zone, that extends to 200 nautical miles from the baseline, measured from the baseline. But in some cases, this can go up to 350 nautical miles as well. If a country can prove that its continental shelf is extending beyond its EEZ and provide the required evidence, its EEZ can be extended up to 350 nautical miles. So these are the maritime limits laid down by the UN clause. So the airspace above it also follows the same norms. Wherever territorial waters are present, the air above it is national airspace. The moment you cross territorial waters or you cross national airspace, you are entering international airspace. So these jurisdictions are very crucial as far as maritime traffic, air traffic, rights over resources are concerned. Let's look at question 45. Consider the following. The International Seabed Authority, ISA, was established under the 1982 UN Convention on Law of the Sea. It's headquartered in Kingston, Jamaica. India currently has no deep sea exploration licenses issued by the ISA. Which of the above statements is or are correct? Let me give you the answer quickly. The first statement is correct. Second statement is also correct, but the third statement is wrong. It's incorrect. So correct answer would be option B, 1 and 2 only. International Seabed Authority was established by UN clause. It's headquartered in Kingston, Jamaica in the Caribbean, and its mandate is to regulate and govern mining activities in the deep sea, on the seabed. Because beyond your EEZ, the moment you cross EEZ, you are entering the high seas. And the seabed present in the high seas, it doesn't belong to anyone. It's part of the global commons. No country will have sovereignty over international seabed. But the resources present here are very precious. Right? So these mineral resources can be allocated for exploration and mining for certain countries which apply for mining license. And India has secured mining licenses from International Seabed Authority. Is that clear? We have already secured a couple of deep sea exploration licenses in the Central Indian Ocean Basin, which has a very rich presence of polymetallic nodules. Polymetallic nodules are present in very rich concentration in the Central Indian Ocean Basin, and India has already been allocated a site. We have 2 licenses for exploring the polymetallic nodules that are distributed over here. We are also focusing on deep sea exploration missions such as Samudrayan project. We are competing with China, US and many other powers to explore the depths of the ocean, right? In the range of 5,000 to 6,000 meters and below. There could be precious mineral resources present, and we are trying to explore and harvest these resources. And the topic is all the more important because recently India has applied for 2 fresh licenses. Just few weeks ago, we applied for 2 new licenses to explore polymetallic sulfides, which are very rich in copper, zinc, etc. Even they contain gold and silver in the Carlsberg Ridge of Central Indian Ocean. And we have also applied a license for cobalt-rich ferromanganese crusts. We want to explore the presence of these ferromanganese crusts which is very rich in cobalt, and as you know, it's a critical mineral, in the Afenisi-Nicotin Sea Mount, again in the central Indian Ocean. This is to the south of Maldives, essentially. So now let's look at question number 46. Consider the following statements. It's regarding the high seas. The high seas are areas beyond exclusive economic zone of any country. This is a correct statement. After you cross the exclusive economic zone, right, you are entering the high seas, which again doesn't belong to any country. It's part of global commons. No country can claim sovereignty in the high seas. In 2023, the Treaty of High Seas was adopted. Yes, this is correct. It's called the BBNJ Treaty, Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdiction. Because if no country has jurisdiction and sovereignty in the high seas, who will look after the environment and biodiversity in the high seas? Because pollution, global warming, it's causing damage to the biodiversity present in the high seas. So, to protect biodiversity beyond your national jurisdiction, beyond EEZ, this global treaty was adopted last year in 2023 called the Treaty of the High Seas, or also known as BBNJ. So all three statements are correct. 1, 2 and 3. So I have added the main objectives of BBNJ treaty over here, which includes establishment of marine protected areas in the high seas, then implementing environment impact assessment for any kind of commercial activity in the oceans, in the high seas, and using marine genetic resources in a sustainable manner by following the blue economy model, and sharing the benefits equitably, and building the capacity of the poor developing nations by providing the technology and finance. These are the primary objectives of the Treaty of the High Seas, or BBNJ Treaty. So now we are looking at the last section, just 4 more questions to go. We are going to discuss few important strategic projects and places that were in the news. IIT Madras has inaugurated its first foreign campus in which place, in which country? This is a current affairs related question, but there is a static concept attached to it. The correct answer is option C. It's in Zanzibar, Tanzania. IIT Madras opened its first foreign campus in this small island called Zanzibar, which is located in Tanzania. It's located in the Indian Ocean, and if you ask why India chose this small island of Zanzibar, right, which is just a small speck in the Indian Ocean, there's a reason behind it. India has historical, cultural, economic relations with Tanzania and East Africa. Since centuries, our traders and merchants and money lenders, especially from Gujarat, they have been working in this part of Africa. Right? Since many centuries, Gujarati money lenders, then traders and merchants from southern India, they have been engaging with East Africa, and we have a very strong Indian influence in East African countries like Tanzania, even in Kenya for that matter. Zanzibar was the top slave market at one point during 17 and 1800s. The Omani Sultanate used to run one of the biggest and most notorious African slave market, where Africans were abused, traded like commodities. The colonial powers like the British, the French, they would purchase the African slaves and they would trade the African slaves, take them across their colonies. This was one of the most notorious violation of human rights the world has witnessed. So the slave business was run by the Omani Sultanate, powered by the British colonial enterprises and European colonial powers. And guess who brought the money? Right? The money is usually brought by it was Gujarati money lenders collectively who were financing the Omani Sultanate to run the trade slave network, which are centered around Zanzibar. Plus, Indian traders, money lenders have been involved in many other businesses here in East Africa, even today. So that is the connection. And that is why IITM has opened its first foreign campus over here. Next, question number 48. Question number 48. The construction of a cargo terminal in Astara on the Caspian Sea could be relevant for which project? This was a topic in the news, plus it's a relatively older topic as well. The correct answer is B, the INSTC project, International North-South Transport Corridor project. INSTC is a proposed transport route which is supposed to create a shorter link from India to Iran to Russia. It can be a shorter, alternative, more efficient connectivity route which can bypass the longer Red Sea route. Because currently for trade between India and Russia, we depend on the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, Red Sea and Suez Canal, which is a very long route to reach Europe and Russia. It takes more time, it's more expensive. So from 1990s, there is a proposal between India, Iran and also Russia. It also includes Azerbaijan. So these countries have proposed the idea of INSTC to create a multimodal transport network to connect Indian ports with Iranian ports like Bandar Abbas and Chabahar, and use the road rail network of Iran to reach Azerbaijan and the Caspian Sea, and use inland navigation to bring the goods to Russia. So as part of this proposed corridor, right, there are some important cargo terminals and connectivity facilities which are part of the proposed project. And recently, the Astara cargo terminal was in the news. You can see that here in the map. This is the Caspian Sea, which is a landlocked endorheic lake, one of the world's largest lakes. So recently from Iran, in Rasht, which is a commercial center in Iran, a railway track was completed that connects with Astara in Azerbaijan. This is going to be a key component of INSTC. So from Iran, through the rail network from Rasht through Astara, goods can be brought into Azerbaijan, and from the Caspian Sea, it can be taken through inland navigation to Russia. Russia also has built a major cargo terminal called Astrakhan, facing the Caspian Sea. So from Azerbaijan to Russia, that is from Astara to Astrakhan, inland navigation route has been established in the Caspian, which benefits the INSTC project. So please take a look at the countries which have shown interest apart from India, Iran, Russia and Azerbaijan. Even Armenia, Turkey and many others have expressed interest in the last few years to be a part of this ambitious project. Let's look at question 49. The last but one question, the penultimate question. Where is the strategic Cocos Islands or Keeling Islands located, and which country does it belong to? There are 4 options. Please go ahead and give me the answer. The Cocos Islands, also called Keeling Islands, belongs to which country? Where is it located? Some are saying C, some of them are saying B. I know, again, it's a confusing question. The question is not referring to the Coco Islands of Myanmar. Right? Coco Islands of Myanmar is also often in the news because it's alleged that China has set up intelligence gathering infrastructure. It has taken Coco Islands on lease from Myanmar and it is trying to spy on India. But that is just the Coco group of islands. Here the question is asking Cocos Islands, also called Keeling Islands. It's specifically mentioned. So this is in the Indian Ocean. It belongs to Australia. Why was it in the news? Because recently the Indian Air Force, which took part in an exercise in Australia, on its way back, it landed strategic aircrafts at the military base that Australia has at the Coco Keeling Islands. Now look at the location of this island group that belongs to Australia. It's a critical location, right? It's midway between India and Australia and it faces the choke points in Southeast Asia. There are major choke points present here that provide access from Indian Ocean to the Pacific. So there are 2 islands that belong to Australia here. One is the Cocos or Keeling Islands and the other is the Christmas Island. Australia has military facilities over here, and since India and Australia share very good military relations, we are part of the Quad grouping as well. Indian forces have been given access recently to the Cocos military base, which is maintained by Australia. This will help India-Australia to safeguard the choke points like Malacca Strait near Singapore, the Sunda Strait and the Lombok Strait, which are all important choke points, maritime choke points that are crucial for connecting Indian Ocean with the Pacific. So by establishing the military presence here jointly with Australia, we can dominate these waters of the Indian Ocean and thereby control access as well to these maritime choke points. Coming to the last question, a match the following type of question. Consider the following pairs, strategic ports in the news, matched with countries. You need to check which of them are correctly matched. Port of Bataan matched with South Korea. Port Moresby matched with Fiji. Matala Airport matched with Sri Lanka. So let me give you the right answer. 1 and 2 are incorrectly matched. The third pair is correctly matched. So what's the right answer? Option C, 3 only is the correct answer. So Port Bataan is a proposed port in the Philippines over the Bataan Peninsula. It is relevant for us because recently India's Adani Ports has placed a bid to be involved in the construction and operation of this strategic port, which could become a potential tool for India to project its influence in the Philippines, in the South China Sea, where China has been very aggressive. Then Port Moresby, it is the capital of Papua New Guinea, a strategic port in the Indian Ocean. If you paid attention to the FIPIC topic, I told you that the FIPIC summit last year was held at Port Moresby, where PM Modi visited. So India has very good relations with PNG, and we can potentially access Port Moresby to project our military influence in the South Pacific. Then finally, Matala Airport, the world's most silent airport, because not a single flight has taken off in the last few years, and it's located in southern Sri Lanka, right next to the strategic Hambantota port. It was a Chinese project. China built the Hambantota port and Matala Airport. It's named after its former president, Mahinda Rajapaksa. It's called the Matala Rajapaksa International Airport. But the project has been a commercial failure. It has failed commercially. Not a single flight has taken off. So it's called the world's most silent airport. Now, it is very relevant for us because India has been eyeing the project. We wanted to be involved in the revival of Matala Airport. And after many years, recently, an Indian company, along with a Russian company, they have formed a joint venture. And Sri Lankan government has given the contract to this joint venture between India and Russia to revive the Matala Rajapaksa International Airport. All right. So that is why these important locations were in the news, and they are very relevant for our upcoming exams. So on this note, I complete all the 50 MCQs as promised, along with a detailed discussion of several topics, including some relevant subtopics. So I hope the session has been useful and helpful. If you did benefit, please let us know through your likes, through your comments. After the stream ends, please comment below. Today is the last session of Conclave Prelims, and we would be the most happiest and satisfied if this series could help you crack the upcoming prelims exam. So from the bottom of all our hearts, we wish you all the very best for the upcoming exam. Keep supporting us, and we will continue to make these honest efforts, the best possible efforts to help all the aspirants and candidates. That is it for today. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.